The sound of ripping fabric echoed through the grand hall like a death sentence, and suddenly, Arya stood half-naked before 300 wolves, including the Alpha King himself. Time seemed to stop. The delicate champagne silk of her mother's dress, the only beautiful thing she'd ever owned, now hung in tatters down her back, exposing her bare skin to the cold air and hundreds of staring eyes. Arya's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't move. Couldn't think. Could only stand there frozen on the presentation platform while her stepmother's hand remained hovering near her shoulder, perfectly positioned where she just adjusted the dress. "Oh dear," Lady Helena said, her voice dripping with false concern. "How unfortunate. The fabric must have been too old, too fragile for such an important occasion." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not everyone, some faces showed pity, others anger, but enough. Enough to make Arya's face burn with humiliation so intense she thought she might actually die from it. This morning, standing in her small attic room, she'd felt almost beautiful for the first time in years. The dress had been packed away in her mother's trunk, preserved in tissue paper and lavender. Arya had barely remembered it until yesterday, when desperation made her search through her mother's things one more time. The gown had been stunning once, champagne silk with delicate beading along the bodice, the kind of dress that whispered of old money and careful elegance. It had needed alterations. Arya was taller than her mother had been, leaner. She'd stayed up all night with needle and thread, her fingers cramping, eyes burning, determined to make it work. She'd known Helena would try to stop her. Her stepmother had made that clear a week ago. "You?" Helena had laughed, standing in the parlor of their pack house estate. "Attend the Luna selection? Don't be ridiculous, Arya. You're wolfless. Broken. You'd humiliate our entire family." "I'm not wolfless," Arya had said quietly. "My wolf is just dormant." "Same thing." Vivian had lounged on the settee, examining her perfect manicured nails. Besides, why would the Alpha King want damaged goods? Arya had no answer to that. She'd asked herself the same question 1,000 times. But something deeper than logic had pushed her. The invitation had come to every unmated female in the Western Territories between 18 and 25. That meant her too. And after 22 years of being told she was worthless, after 5 years of living under Helena's cruel thumb since her father died, Arya had wanted one moment, just one, to feel like she mattered. So she'd snuck out before dawn, walked 3 miles to catch the transport into the capital, and arrived at the royal pack grounds with her head high and her mother's dress swishing around her ankles. She should have known better. Now, standing half-naked before the most powerful wolves in the territory, she understood exactly what her place in the world was. "Well?" Helena's voice cut through Arya's paralysis. "Don't just stand there, girl. Cover yourself. You're embarrassing everyone." Arya's hands moved on instinct, trying to hold the ruined fabric together. But it was impossible. The dress had been ripped from shoulder to hip, the delicate silk shredded beyond repair. "Perhaps we should remove her from the selection," someone murmured from the crowd. "She's clearly not ready for this level of..." "She snuck out of our house," Vivian announced, standing from her own place in line, her perfect golden gown shimmering under the chandeliers. "We tried to explain that she wasn't suitable for the Luna selection, but she wouldn't listen. Our family has been so patient with her condition, but..." "Enough." The single word cracked through the hall like thunder. Everyone froze. Arya's head jerked up, and for the first time since the fabric had ripped, she looked directly at the raised dais where the Alpha King sat. Alpha Theron Blackwood. Even sitting, he radiated power. Dark hair, sharp features, and shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of the entire Western Territory pack. Arya had seen pictures, of course. Everyone had. But pictures didn't capture the sheer presence of him, the way the air itself seemed to bend around his authority. Or the way his silver eyes had locked onto her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. He rose from his throne in one fluid movement. The room collectively held its breath. "Lady Helena," Theron said, his voice cold enough to frost the windows. "Step forward." Helena's expression flickered. Just for a second, Arya saw uncertainty cross her stepmother's face. But Helena was too practiced at social warfare to show weakness for long. She glided forward with a graceful curtsy. "Your Majesty. Did you rip that dress?" Silence crashed through the hall. Helena's smile didn't waver. "I merely tried to adjust it, Your Majesty. The garment was clearly too old, too fragile. I was attempting to help before." "You're lying." 2 words. Flat. Absolute. Helena's face went pale. "Your Majesty, I assure you. I watched you." Theron descended the dais steps with predatory grace. "My eyesight is excellent, Lady Helena. I saw you grip the fabric, brace your feet, and tear the dress deliberately. So let's skip the part where you insult my intelligence, shall we?" The room erupted in whispers. Arya couldn't breathe. The Alpha King himself had been watching? Had seen? Theron crossed the floor toward the presentation platform. Toward her. Every instinct Arya had screamed at her to run, but she couldn't move. Could barely think past the humiliation and shock and the sudden, overwhelming awareness that the most powerful alpha in the territory was walking straight at her with murder in his silver eyes. Except when he reached her, his hands moved to the ceremonial cloak clasped at his shoulders. He unfastened it with quick, efficient movements, and before Arya could process what was happening, heavy warmth settled over her shoulders. The royal cloak. Black as midnight, lined with silver silk, marked with the blackwood crest. Arya's breath stuttered. The cloak smelled like pine and winter and something uniquely alpha, dark and dangerous and impossibly safe all at once. "Anyone who disrespects a female under my protection," Theron said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall, "disrespects me." He turned, and his eyes, those dangerous silver eyes, fixed on Helena with lethal precision. "Lady Helena, you and your daughter are dismissed from the selection. Effective immediately." Helena's mask cracked. "Your Majesty, you can't." "I can." Theron's voice dropped lower, colder. "In fact, you should be grateful I'm stopping at dismissal. What you did was a deliberate act of cruelty, carried out in my hall, during a sacred selection ceremony. I could have you banned from Pack lands entirely. Would you like me to reconsider?" Helena's mouth opened and closed. Vivian had gone white, her perfect composure shattered. "I asked you a question, Lady Helena." "No." Helena's voice was barely audible. "No, Your Majesty. Thank you for your mercy. Get out." Helena grabbed Vivian's arm and practically dragged her toward the exit. The crowd parted like water, no one willing to be associated with the spectacle. Arya watched them go, her mind spinning, unable to process what had just happened. The Alpha King had protected her. The Alpha King had given her his cloak. The Alpha King. Theron turned back to her, and Arya's thoughts scattered. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. Taller than she'd realized, built like violence wrapped in expensive tailoring. His silver eyes studied her with an intensity that should have been frightening but instead felt, assessing. Like he was reading things in her she didn't know were written. "What's your name?" he asked. Arya's voice came out as a whisper. "Arya Whitmore, Your Majesty." "Look at me, Arya." She forced her eyes up to meet his. The moment their gazes locked, something shifted in the air between them. Something electric and terrifying and completely unprecedented. And deep in her chest, in the hollow space where her wolf had been silent and dormant for 5 endless years, Arya felt a stirring. A presence. A awakening. Her wolf, responding for the first time since she was 17, since the night her father died and something inside her broke and went quiet. Her wolf was waking up. And it was waking up for him. Arya gasped, the sensation so shocking she swayed on her feet. Theron's hand shot out, steadying her elbow with surprising gentleness. "Breathe," he said quietly. "You're safe now." But Arya didn't feel safe. She felt like every certainty she'd built her life around was crumbling. The Alpha King's cloak was heavy on her shoulders, his hand warm through the silk, and her wolf was stirring, actually stirring, for the first time in years. None of this made sense. "Your Majesty," she managed. "I don't understand why." "Neither do I." Something flickered in those silver eyes. Not quite softness, but not cold either. Yet. He released her elbow and stepped back, though his gaze never left hers. When he spoke again, his voice carried to the crowd. "The selection continues. All candidates will be treated with respect, or they will answer to me personally. Is that clear?" A chorus of, "Yes, Your Majesty," echoed through the hall. Theron looked at Arya one more time, something unreadable crossing his features. Then he turned and walked back to his dais, leaving her standing on the platform wrapped in his cloak, her ruined dress hidden beneath royal silk. The other candidates stared at her. The crowd whispered. And somewhere in the back of Arya's mind, past the shock and confusion and the warmth of a wolf spirit she'd thought was lost forever, a single thought crystallized. Her life had just changed completely. And she had no idea if that was salvation or disaster. Chapter 2. The private chamber they'd given Arya was larger than her entire attic room back at the pack house. She sat on the edge of an enormous canopy bed, still wrapped in the Alpha King's cloak, and tried to stop her hands from shaking. They wouldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the hall, heard the ripping fabric, felt the weight of 300 stairs. And then she felt him. The warmth of the cloak settling over her shoulders. The cold fury in his voice as he defended her. The impossible stirring of her wolf. A soft knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "Miss Whitmore?" A woman's voice, gentle and professional. "May I come in?" Arya cleared her throat. "Yes." The door opened to reveal a woman in her 40s, dressed in the crisp uniform of royal staff. Her kind eyes took in Arya's appearance, still clutching the cloak, still wearing the ruined dress underneath, and her expression softened. "I'm Margaret, head of the candidates' quarters. I've brought you a fresh dress and some tea. You've had quite an ordeal." That was putting it mildly. Margaret moved through the room with efficient grace, setting a tray on the side table and laying out a gown across the chair, deep emerald green, simple but elegant. Nothing like the elaborate confections the other candidates had worn. "I thought you might prefer something understated," Margaret said, reading Arya's expression. "The other gowns in your size were quite ornate." "Thank you." Arya's voice came out hoarse. "That's perfect." Margaret poured tea with practiced hands. "His Majesty has requested that you be given every accommodation. Whatever you need, you have only to ask." Arya's fingers tightened on the cloak. "Why did he help me?" "I couldn't say, dear. But in my 20 years serving this pack, I've learned that His Majesty never acts without reason." Margaret handed her the teacup. "Drink. You'll feel better." The tea was chamomile and honey, warm and soothing. Arya sipped it gratefully while Margaret bustled around, opening curtains, adjusting pillows, giving her time to collect herself. "The selection continues tomorrow," Margaret said gently. "You'll have 3 trials over the next week, tests of intelligence, strength, and leadership. The Alpha King will evaluate each candidate and make his choice at the full moon." Arya's stomach nodded. "I don't belong here." "You received an invitation, same as everyone else. That means you belong exactly as much as any of them." Margaret's voice firmed. "More, after what I saw today. You held your head high when others would have crumbled." Had she? Arya didn't remember holding her head high. She remembered wanting to die. "Now," Margaret continued, "I'll leave you to change and rest. Dinner is served in the main hall at 7, but you're welcome to have a tray sent up if you prefer." "I'll go to dinner." The words surprised Arya as much as they seemed to surprise Margaret. But something stubborn had taken root in her chest. Helena had tried to destroy her. Had succeeded, almost. But the Alpha King himself had stopped it. She wouldn't hide now. Margaret smiled. "Good girl. I'll return at 6:30 to help you dress. After Margaret left, Arya stood and let the ruined champagne silk fall away. Her mother's dress, destroyed. The last piece of her she'd had. Grief threatened to swallow her, but her wolf, that impossible, awakening presence, pushed back with something that felt almost like anger. We are more than a dress. More than their cruelty. Arya froze. Had her wolf just spoken? For years, the space where her wolf should have been had been hollow. Silent. She'd felt broken, incomplete, like half of her soul had been carved away. And now suddenly, after 5 years of nothing, her wolf was stirring. Because of him? She looked down at the cloak still clutched in her hands. The blackwood crest gleamed in the afternoon light, a wolf's head surrounded by silver stars. She should give it back. It wasn't hers. But when she tried to set it down on the bed, her chest constricted with something close to panic. No. Keep it. It's his. I know it's his, Arya whispered to her wolf. That's why I need to return it. Not yet. The response was so clear, so adamant, that Arya found herself draping the cloak over the chair instead, where she could see it. Where she could catch the scent of pine and winter and that dark, dangerous something that was uniquely alpha. She was losing her mind. Arya dressed in the green gown, it fit perfectly, hugging her curves before flowing to the floor, and braided her dark hair over one shoulder. No elaborate styling, no jewels. Just herself, plain and simple. She'd be gone within a week anyway. Might as well be honest about who she was. Dinner was exactly as uncomfortable as Arya had anticipated. The dining hall was smaller than the grand hall but no less impressive, with vaulted ceilings and long tables laden with more food than Arya had seen in months. The candidates sat together, 23 of them now that Helena and Vivian had been dismissed. 23 women, all beautiful, all accomplished, all staring at Arya like she was a fascinating insect. She kept her head down and ate sparingly, trying to ignore the whispers that followed her every movement. But it was impossible not to overhear. Can't believe he gave her his cloak. Probably felt sorry for her. Wolfless, I heard. What's she even doing here? Lady Helena will destroy her family's reputation after this. Arya's appetite vanished. She set down her fork and stared at her plate, willing herself invisible. Ignore them. The voice came from beside her. Arya looked up to find a woman around her age with warm brown skin and intelligent dark eyes. She wore a gown of deep purple and carried herself with quiet confidence. I'm Celeste, the woman said, offering a small smile. From the northern packs. Arya. I know. Celeste's smile widened. Everyone knows now. You made quite an entrance. Arya winced. That wasn't exactly my intention. No, I imagine it wasn't. Celeste leaned in, lowering her voice. For what it's worth, I think what the Alpha King did was incredible. Lady Helena is notorious for her cruelty. It was time someone put her in her place. You know her? Know of her. My mother sits on the Northern Council. Helena has been trying to marry Vivian into high-ranking families for years. Celeste paused. She must be furious right now. That was an understatement. Arya could only imagine the rage currently unfolding back at the pack house. Helena would blame her for this, naturally. Would make sure Arya paid for the humiliation. If Arya ever went back. Can I ask you something? Celeste said carefully. Is it true that your wolf is dormant? There it was. The question everyone wanted to ask but only Celeste was bold enough to voice. Yes, Arya said quietly. Since I was 17. But you felt something today. I saw your face when the Alpha King gave you his cloak. You looked different. Arya's hand moved unconsciously to her chest, to the place where her wolf now pressed against her consciousness like a bird testing its wings after years in a cage. I don't know what I felt. Well, whatever it was, you should probably figure it out quickly. Celeste gestured subtly toward the head table, where the Alpha King sat surrounded by advisors. This selection isn't really about finding love, you know. It's political. What do you mean? Celeste glanced around, making sure no one was listening too closely. The Alpha King fought a brutal war 3 years ago. Unified the territories, crushed the rebellion, became the youngest Alpha King in history. But his council is nervous. They want stability. Heirs. An alliance with one of the powerful families. That's why he agreed to the selection, Arya said slowly, pieces clicking into place. Exactly. He doesn't want a mate. He wants peace and a secure bloodline. Celeste took a sip of wine. Most of us are here because our families pushed us. Political maneuvering. But you? I'm nobody, Arya finished. No political value whatsoever. Which makes what happened today even stranger. Celeste studied her. Why would the Alpha King risk political backlash to defend someone with no power or status? Arya had no answer. She'd been asking herself the same question for hours. Across the hall, she felt eyes on her. She looked up, and locked gazes with Theron Blackwood. Even from this distance, the intensity of his stare made her breath catch. He sat perfectly still, wine glass in hand, while advisors spoke around him. But his attention was entirely on her, silver eyes unreadable in the candlelight. Arya looked away first, her heart hammering. Interesting, Celeste murmured. What? Nothing. But Celeste was smiling. Just, keep the cloak close tonight. I have a feeling you might need it. Arya couldn't sleep. She'd tried. Had changed into the nightgown Margaret provided, climbed into the enormous bed, and closed her eyes. But her mind wouldn't quiet, and her wolf wouldn't settle. The presence that had been dormant for so long now paced restlessly inside her, agitated and alert. Finally, at midnight, Arya gave up. She wrapped the Alpha King's cloak around her shoulders, she couldn't help herself, and slipped out of her chamber. The hallways were quiet, lit by soft glowing orbs that cast everything in silver blue light. Arya wandered without direction, just needing to move, to think. She needed to return the cloak. It was the right thing to do, the proper thing. She'd find him tomorrow, thank him formally, and give back what belonged to him. Even if her wolf snarled in protest at the very thought. You're being ridiculous, she whispered to herself. It's just a cloak. But it wasn't. It was his scent, his warmth, his protection wrapped around her like a shield. And every time she thought about giving it back, her chest ached. Arya found herself in a conservatory that opened onto moonlit gardens. The glass doors were unlocked, and the night air called to her. She stepped outside, breathing deeply, letting the cool air clear her head. The gardens were beautiful, carefully manicured paths winding between flowering bushes and ancient trees. A fountain burbled somewhere in the darkness. Everything smelled green and alive. Arya walked deeper into the gardens, the cloak trailing behind her like a shadow. She should go back. It was late, and she shouldn't be wandering around the royal grounds alone. But her feet carried her forward anyway, drawn by something she couldn't name. She rounded a corner near a cluster of night-blooming jasmine and stopped dead. Theron Blackwood stood beside the fountain, hands in his pockets, staring up at the full moon. He'd changed from his formal attire into simple dark pants and a white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. Without the regal bearing and crown ceremony surrounding him, he looked younger. Tired. The moonlight carved shadows under his eyes and turned his silver gaze to Mercury. Arya's first instinct was to flee. Her second was to apologize for intruding. But before she could do either, he spoke without turning around. You should be sleeping. His voice carried easily across the space between them. Arya's throat went dry. I couldn't, she managed. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disturb. You didn't. He finally turned to face her, and the full weight of his attention hit her like a physical force. His eyes moved from her face to the cloak wrapped around her shoulders, and something flickered in his expression. You kept it. I wanted to return it. Arya took a step forward, then stopped, suddenly uncertain. To thank you. For what you did today. You don't need to thank me. His voice was flat, dismissive. What Lady Helena did was unacceptable. I merely corrected it. It was more than that. Arya's hands tightened on the cloak. You defended me when no one else would. You humiliated one of the most powerful families in the territory for a nobody. That matters. You're not a nobody. The words came out sharp, almost angry. Don't say that. The vehemence in his tone startled her. They stared at each other across the garden, tension crackling in the air like static before a storm. Why did you help me? Arya asked quietly. Everyone keeps asking, and I don't have an answer. Theron's jaw tightened. Does there need to be a reason beyond basic decency? Most people don't show me basic decency. Something dark passed over his features. He turned away from her, back to the fountain, his shoulders rigid. Then most people are fools. Arya moved closer without thinking, drawn by the same inexplicable pull that had brought her to the gardens in the first place. Your Majesty. Theron. When we're alone, call me Theron. The intimacy of the request stole her breath. Theron, she said softly. I need to understand. Did you feel, when you gave me the cloak, did you feel anything strange? His entire body went still. No. He was lying. She knew it as surely as she knew her own name. My wolf woke up, Arya said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. For the first time in 5 years, my wolf woke up when you touched me. And I don't know what that means, but I know it means something. It means nothing. Theron spun to face her, and the coldness in his expression made her step back. Your wolf was dormant. Something triggered it. That's all. You don't believe that. I believe what I choose to believe. He moved toward her, and Arya's instinct was to retreat, but she held her ground. He stopped just inches away, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. Whatever you think you felt, forget it. I'm choosing a Luna for political alliance. That's the only reason this selection exists. Then why give me your cloak? Arya challenged, her own frustration rising. Why defend me if I'm so insignificant? Because you deserve defending. The words erupted from him with shocking intensity. They both froze. The moonlight seemed brighter suddenly, the air heavier. Arya's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Theron stared down at her, breathing hard, something wild and desperate flickering behind his eyes. You stood there, he said, his voice lower now, rough. Humiliated and exposed, and you didn't run. Didn't cry. You stood there with your chin up like a queen, and I thought. He cut himself off, jaw clenching. What did you think? Arya whispered. That you were the bravest thing I'd ever seen. The admission hung between them, raw and honest. Arya couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Could only stare up into those silver eyes and feel something fundamental shifting inside her. Here. Her hands moved without permission, starting to unfasten the cloak. Take it back. I shouldn't. Don't. Theron's hand shot out, catching her wrist. Keep it. The moment his skin touched hers, the world exploded. Not physically. Nothing external changed. But inside, something ancient and powerful snapped into place with the force of a lightning strike. The mate bond. It roared through Arya's body like wildfire, burning away every doubt and question and leaving only one absolute truth, mine. He's mine. Her wolf didn't whisper it. Her wolf screamed it, surging forward with such intensity that Arya gasped, swaying on her feet. And she knew, by the way Theron's eyes went wide with shock, by the way his grip on her wrist tightened almost painfully, that he felt it too. No, he breathed. That's impossible. But it wasn't impossible. It was real. The bond thrummed between them like a living thing, golden and unbreakable, tying her soul to his with chains forged by the moon herself. Arya's free hand pressed to her chest, trying to contain the explosion of sensation. You feel it? Yes. The words sounded torn from him. But it doesn't matter. How can it not matter? Tears burned her eyes. We're mates. You're nobody. Theron dropped her wrist like she'd burned him, stepping back. His face had gone hard, remote. You said it yourself. No power, no status, no wolf until today. I need a Luna who can strengthen my position, who can bear strong heirs, who can be useful. The words tasted bitter. I understand. No, you don't. Theron dragged a hand through his hair, and for just a moment, she saw anguish in his expression. I have obligations. I have a territory to protect. I can't afford to choose based on this. On fate? Arya's voice broke. On what the moon goddess herself decreed. The moon goddess has questionable judgment. The cruel dismissal hit her like a slap. Arya wrapped the cloak tighter around herself, suddenly freezing despite the warm night. Then I'll save you the trouble of having to reject me formally. I'll withdraw from the selection. No. She looked at him, startled. Theron's expression was unreadable again, his alpha mask firmly in place. You'll stay. You'll complete the trials. You'll give me no reason to dismiss you, and you'll tell no one about this. Is that clear? Why? Arya demanded. If I mean nothing. Because I won't have them saying I drove out my mate. The word came out savage, possessive, and completely at odds with the rejection in his eyes. You'll stay, you'll compete, and when I choose someone else, it will be because you weren't suited. Not because I'm a coward. The cruelty of it stole her breath. He was asking her to watch him choose another woman. To smile through it. To pretend her heart wasn't being torn apart. This changes nothing, Theron said, his voice cold. I have obligations. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the garden and leaving Arya standing alone by the fountain, wrapped in his cloak and drowning in the mate bond he'd just rejected. She sank onto the edge of the fountain, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. Her wolf howled inside her, the sound heartbroken and furious. He felt it. He knows. Why would he reject us? I don't know, Arya whispered. I don't know. But her wolf's response wasn't about the rejection. Instead, something ancient stirred in her consciousness, and her wolf's voice came through clearer than ever before. Remember who you really are. Arya froze. What? Remember. Before Helena. Before the dormancy. Remember the truth they buried. What truth? Arya demanded, but her wolf had gone silent again, leaving only the cryptic message echoing in her mind. Remember who you really are. But Arya knew who she was. She was nobody. She'd always been nobody. Hadn't she? She stared down at the cloak, the Alpha King's cloak, and felt the mate bond pulse through her veins like a second heartbeat. Something was wrong here. Something deeper than just a dormant wolf or a rejected bond. Something someone had hidden from her. And Arya was going to find out what. Chapter 3. Morning came too quickly, bringing with it the harsh reality of Arya's situation. She sat at the breakfast table in the candidate's dining room, pushing scrambled eggs around her plate while the other women chattered around her. Most ignored her completely. A few shot her curious glances. And one, a stunning woman with platinum blonde hair and ice blue eyes, watched her with the focused intensity of a predator sizing up prey. Lady Morgana Silvercrest. Arya had learned her name from the whispers. Daughter of Alpha Darius Silvercrest, who controlled the Eastern Territories. Bred from birth to be a Luna. Beautiful, powerful, and according to Celeste's whispered commentary last night, absolutely ruthless. Morgana sat at the head of the table like she already owned it, commanding attention without saying a word. Her gown was white silk that hugged every perfect curve, and diamonds glittered at her throat, real diamonds, not the paste jewels most of the candidates wore. Everything about her screamed wealth, power, and breeding. Everything Arya wasn't. "I heard the most interesting rumor this morning," Morgana said, her voice carrying easily through the room. The chatter died instantly. Apparently, someone was wandering the gardens quite late last night. After midnight, in fact. Arya's hand tightened on her fork. "How scandalous," one of the other candidates, a redhead named Isabel, said with a giggle. "Who would be so bold?" "I couldn't possibly say." Morgana's smile was razor-sharp. "But I do hope whoever it was remembers that the Alpha King values discretion and propriety in Aluna. Wandering around unchaperoned at night sends rather the wrong message, don't you think?" Several women nodded in agreement. Arya kept her eyes on her plate, feeling heat crawl up her neck. "Perhaps she couldn't sleep," Celeste said mildly. "I know I found it difficult to rest in a strange place." "Oh, I slept wonderfully." Morgana took a delicate sip of tea. "But then, I'm accustomed to palace life. My family has visited the royal grounds many times. In fact, the Alpha King and I have known each other since childhood." The implication was clear, Morgana belonged here. Everyone else was just pretending. "How nice for you," Arya said quietly. Morgana's gaze snapped to her. "I'm sorry, did you say something? I didn't realize you spoke." "I said that must be nice. Knowing the Alpha King personally." Arya forced herself to meet those cold blue eyes. "It must make the selection much less intimidating for you." "Oh, I'm not intimidated." Morgana's smile widened. "Are you?" "Yes." Terrified. But Arya wasn't about to give her the satisfaction. "Should I be?" "That depends. Are you serious about competing, or are you just here for the novelty?" Morgana leaned forward slightly. "Because from what I understand, you have no wolf, no status, and no business being here at all. The only reason you weren't dismissed after yesterday's incident is because the Alpha King took pity on you." The words landed like stones. Around the table, women shifted uncomfortably. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked eager for Arya's response. Arya set down her fork carefully. "My wolf may have been dormant, but she's awake now. I received an invitation same as everyone else. And I'm not going anywhere." "How fascinating." Morgana's tone suggested it was anything but. "Well, I suppose we'll see how long that confidence lasts. The trials start today, after all. They tend to separate the truly worthy from the, let's say, optimistic." Before Arya could respond, Margaret swept into the room with her usual efficiency. "Good morning, ladies. I hope you all slept well. In 1 hour, you'll be escorted to the training grounds for your first trial." She paused, letting the announcement sink in. "Today you'll be tested on qualities essential for Aluna: leadership, strategy, and combat readiness. The Alpha King and his council will be observing. I suggest you dress appropriately." The room erupted in nervous chatter. Combat readiness? Most of these women had probably never thrown a punch in their lives. Arya's stomach knotted. She'd never had formal training either. Helena had made sure of that, claiming it was pointless to train someone with a dormant wolf. Everything Arya knew about fighting, she'd learned from watching other wolves spar and practicing alone in the woods. It wouldn't be enough. "Don't let her get in your head," Celeste murmured as they filed out of the dining room. "Morgana plays mind games. It's her specialty." "She's not wrong though." Arya kept her voice low. "I don't have training like the rest of you. Maybe not formal training. But you survived 5 years with Lady Helena. That takes a different kind of strength." Celeste squeezed her arm. "Besides, Luna trials aren't just about physical combat. They test everything: intelligence, compassion, strategic thinking. You might surprise yourself." Arya wished she had Celeste's confidence. Back in her chamber, she found training clothes laid out on the bed: leather pants, a fitted tunic, and boots. Simple, practical, designed for movement. She changed quickly, braiding her hair into a tight plait down her back. The Alpha King's cloak still hung over the chair where she'd left it. Arya touched it briefly, feeling the mate bond pulse in response. Somewhere in the palace, Theron was preparing to watch her fail. To watch him choose someone else. Someone like Morgana. Arya turned away from the cloak and headed for the training grounds. The training grounds were massive, an open courtyard surrounded by stone walls, with various stations set up for different challenges. Weapon racks lined one wall. An obstacle course wound through the center. And at the far end, a raised platform held seats for the Alpha King and his council. Arya's breath caught when she saw Theron. He sat in the center seat, dressed in black training leathers that emphasized his warrior's build. His silver eyes scanned the assembled candidates with the same intensity he probably used on battlefields. When his gaze found Arya, it lingered for just a heartbeat too long before moving on. But that heartbeat was enough. The mate bond flared hot and bright, making her gasp. "Focus," her wolf growled. "He's watching. Show him what we are." Easier said than done. "Welcome, candidates," came a booming voice. A massive wolf, at least 6.5 feet tall, built like a mountain, stepped forward. "I am Commander Rook, head of the Royal Guard. For the next 3 hours, you will be tested. Some of you will excel. Some will fail. All of you will be evaluated." He gestured to the various stations. First challenge, strategy and leadership. You'll be divided into teams of 5. Each team must navigate the obstacle course while solving tactical problems. The team that completes the course fastest while making the best strategic decisions wins. Murmurs rippled through the candidates. Teams meant cooperation. It also meant someone could sabotage from within. "Teams are already assigned," Commander Rook continued, reading from a list. Team 1, Morgana, Isabel, Claire, Bethany, and Arya. Of course. Arya watched Morgana's face light up with satisfaction. The other women in their team looked nervous, caught between the council's favorite and the Alpha King's mysterious charity case. "You have 5 minutes to strategize with your team," Rook announced. "Begin." The teams dispersed. Arya followed her group to a corner of the courtyard, very aware of Morgana's calculating gaze. "Well," Morgana said sweetly, "this should be interesting. Let's review the course." She gestured to the obstacle path ahead, rope climbs, balance beams, walls to scale, and what looked like a maze with flags hidden throughout. "We need speed, but we also need to collect those flags. Each flag has a tactical scenario we must solve." "We should split up," Isabel suggested. "Cover more ground." "No." Arya surprised herself by speaking. "Look at the course structure. The maze has only one true path, the others are dead ends. If we split up, we'll waste time backtracking." Morgana's eyes narrowed. "And you would know this how?" "The flags are visible from here. See?" Arya pointed. 3 flags in the maze, but they're arranged in a line. That suggests a single corridor. The dead ends don't have flags. It was true. Now that she'd said it, the pattern was obvious. But Morgana didn't look pleased to have been corrected. "Fine," Morgana said tightly. "We stay together. But I'll lead. Isabel and Claire, you take the rope obstacles. Bethany, you're fastest, you handle the balance beams. Arya." She smiled coldly. "You can carry our supplies." The insult was clear. Arya bit back a retort and accepted the supply pack, a heavy bag of tactical materials they'd need for the scenarios. "Teams, positions." Rook shouted. They lined up at the starting mark. Arya caught Theron's eye from the platform. His expression was unreadable, but she felt the weight of his attention like a physical touch. "Watch me," she thought fiercely. "Watch me prove I'm more than what you think. Go." The teams exploded into motion. Morgana led them forward with aggressive confidence, taking the rope climb first. She scaled it with practiced ease. Clearly, she'd had extensive training. Isabel and Claire followed. Bethany flew across the balance beams like she was born to them. Arya brought up the rear, the heavy pack digging into her shoulders. But she kept pace, her newly awakened wolf lending her strength and coordination she'd never had before. They reached the maze entrance together. True to Arya's observation, there was one main corridor with 3 branching paths, 2 dead ends and one that led deeper. "First flag," Morgana announced, grabbing it. She unrolled the parchment. "Scenario: your pack is ambushed from 2 sides. Resources are limited. What's your priority?" "Protect the young and elderly first," Claire said immediately. "Wrong." Morgana's voice was sharp. "You secure your alpha and strongest fighters first. They're your defense. Once they're safe, they can protect everyone else." Arya frowned. "But the question says resources are limited. If you prioritize fighters, you might lose non-combatants before the fighters can help. The answer should be to divide resources, some for immediate defense, some for evacuation." "That's not what the scenario says," Morgana snapped. "Actually," Bethany said quietly, "Arya might be right. Look, it says priority, not only action. We could do both." Morgana's jaw tightened. "Fine. Mark it down and move on." They pushed deeper into the maze. Second flag, a question about ancient pack law regarding territory disputes. Third flag, herbal remedies for common wolf ailments. "These are useless questions," Isabel muttered. "What Luna needs to know about herbs?" "A good one," Arya said before she could stop herself. "Healers are essential to pack health. Luna should understand basic medicine." "And you do?" Morgana's tone was mocking. "My mother taught me." The words came out defensive. "Wolfsbane for fever. Silverleaf for wounds. Moonpetal for..." "How quaint." Morgana snatched the parchment. "Let's move. We're burning time." They climbed walls, crossed rickety bridges, solved tactical puzzles. And through it all, Arya felt Morgana's growing hostility like a storm building on the horizon. It came to a head at the final obstacle, a rope bridge suspended 20 feet above a mud pit. "Single file," Rook's voice boomed. "One at a time across." Morgana went first, crossing with infuriating grace. Isabel and Claire followed. Bethany started across, and that's when Arya saw it. The rope. One of the support lines had been frayed, nearly cut through. It wouldn't hold much more weight. "Wait!" Arya shouted. "Bethany, stop!" Bethany froze halfway across. "What are you doing?" Morgana demanded from the other side. "The rope's damaged." Arya pointed. "Look at the left support line. It's about to snap." Commander Rook appeared beside her, his expression sharp. He examined the rope, then swore under his breath. "She's right. Bethany, stay still. We'll get you across safely." He signaled to guards, who moved quickly to secure the bridge with additional lines. Once Bethany was safe, Rook turned to Arya. "How did you see that?" "The way the bridge was listing slightly to the left." "And?" She hesitated. "My wolf sensed something wrong." "Your newly awakened wolf that shouldn't have such keen instincts yet," his expression said. But Rook just nodded and made a note on his tablet. Arya crossed last, her heart pounding. She didn't miss the way Morgana stared at her from the other side, cold calculation in those blue eyes. Someone had sabotaged that rope. And Arya had a pretty good idea who. The teams finished at varying times. Morgana's team placed second, which clearly infuriated her, especially since Arya's observation had cost them precious minutes at the final obstacle. "Next trial, combat readiness," Rook announced. "Each candidate will face off in hand-to-hand sparring. 3-minute rounds. Your opponent will be randomly selected." "Random." "Right. Arya wasn't surprised when Morgana's name was called first, or when her random opponent turned out to be her. They faced each other in the sparring circle. Morgana smiled, and it was all Predator. "I'll try not to hurt you too badly," Morgana said, just loud enough for Arya to hear. "We wouldn't want the Alpha King to think I'm cruel." "I'm tougher than I look," Arya replied. "We'll see." Rook signaled the start. Morgana attacked immediately, fast and brutal. Her first strike came at Arya's head, a blow that would have knocked her unconscious if it landed. Arya barely dodged, stumbling back. The next strike caught her ribs. Pain exploded through her side. Arya gasped, trying to get her guard up, but Morgana was relentless. Every move was designed to hurt, to humiliate. "Fight back." Her wolf snarled. "We're not prey." But Arya had no training. She could block some strikes, dodge others, but Morgana was faster, stronger, better. Within a minute, Arya was on the defensive, bleeding from a split lip, pretty sure her ribs were bruised if not cracked. From the platform, she felt Theron's attention like a brand. Felt his tension through the mate bond. Was he pleased she was losing? Relieved to have an excuse to eliminate her? Morgana swept her leg, and Arya went down hard. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs. "Stay down," Morgana hissed, standing over her. "Accept that you don't belong here." Something in Arya snapped. She didn't belong here. Fine. She'd never belonged anywhere. But she'd survived Helena's cruelty for 5 years. She'd survived losing her father, losing her wolf, losing everything. She wasn't going to lose to Morgana Silvercrest. Arya's wolf surged forward with primal fury. Her vision sharpened. Her body moved on instinct, rolling aside as Morgana's boot slammed down where her head had been. Arya swept Morgana's other leg, and suddenly the positions were reversed. Morgana hit the ground with a satisfying thud. Arya didn't think. Just reacted. She pinned Morgana's shoulders, using her body weight to keep the larger woman down. It wouldn't last, Morgana was stronger, but for 3 precious seconds, Arya had her. "I belong exactly as much as you do," Arya said quietly. "Whether you like it or not." Then Rook's whistle blew, ending the match. Arya rolled off, breathing hard. Her ribs screamed. Her lip throbbed. But she'd survived. Morgana stood, fury written across her perfect features. Lucky shot. Maybe. Arya wiped blood from her mouth. "Or maybe you underestimated me." The assembled candidates had gone silent. Even the council members on the platform sat forward, interested. And Theron. Theron was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. But through the mate bond, she felt something that might have been pride. Or possessiveness. Or both. The trials continued for another hour. Arya won some challenges, lost others. But she held her own, and by the end, exhaustion had her swaying on her feet. "Dismissed," Rook finally announced. "Evaluations will be posted tonight. Tomorrow we begin trial 2. Arya limped back toward the palace, every muscle screaming. Celeste caught up to her, offering a supporting arm. "That was incredible," Celeste said. "The way you caught that rope sabotage, and then taking on Morgana? Half the candidates think you're crazy. The other half are terrified of you. I'm too tired to care which half is right." Celeste laughed. "Fair enough. Listen, I need to visit the palace archives before dinner. Want to come? It might take your mind off." "Archives?" Arya stopped walking. "What's in the archives?" "Historical records, mostly. Pack genealogies, old treaties, marriage records dating back centuries." Celeste shrugged. "I'm a bit of a history nerd." "Why?" Arya's heart started pounding. "My mother. She died when I was young, but my father never talked much about her family. He always said she was from a small pack, nothing important. But my wolf said something yesterday. Told me to remember who I really am. Understanding dawned on Celeste's face. You think your mother's records might be there? Maybe. If she was from around here. Then there should be something. Every wolf in the territory is registered. Celeste's eyes gleamed with curiosity. Come on. Let's go digging. The archives were housed in the palace's west wing, a massive library filled with endless rows of leather-bound books and scrolls. An elderly wolf, the head archivist, sat at a desk near the entrance, barely glancing up when they entered. Looking for something specific, he asked, sounding bored. Marriage and birth records, Celeste said smoothly. Research project for the selection. The Alpha King values knowledge of pack history. The archivist waved vaguely toward the back sections. Organized by year and region. Don't reshelve anything, leave it on the return cart. They disappeared into the stacks. Aria's hands trembled as she scanned the spines, looking for the right year. Her mother had died 12 years ago. So she would have been born 35 to 40 years ago, Celeste said, reading her mind. What was your mother's name? Lillian. Lillian Whitmore, but that was her married name. I don't know her maiden name. They pulled books from that era, spreading them across the table. Birth records, marriage certificates, death notices. Page after page of names and dates and pack affiliations. Aria was about to give up when Celeste gasped. Aria. Look at this. She pushed a leather journal across the table. It was a marriage registry from 30 years ago. And there, in elegant script. Lillian Nightshade, first daughter of Alpha Marcus Nightshade and Luna Seraphina Nightshade, Northern High Pack, wed to James Whitmore, third son of Alpha Thomas Whitmore, Western Border Pack. Aria read it 3 times, her mind refusing to process the words. Nightshade. Her mother was a Nightshade. The Northern High Pack was one of the most powerful in the territory. First daughter meant her mother had been heir to an Alpha title. Highborn nobility. That's impossible, Aria whispered. My father said she was nobody. He never mentioned. Wait. Celeste was frantically flipping through another book. Aria, there's more. Look, death records from 25 years ago. Another entry. This one made Aria's blood run cold. Alpha Marcus Nightshade and Luna Seraphina Nightshade, deceased. Circumstances, suspicious. Investigation ongoing. Surviving issue, Lillian Nightshade Whitmore, daughter, whereabouts unknown. Your grandparents were murdered, Celeste breathed. And your mother disappeared right after. The investigation lists her as a person of interest, but then, nothing. The record just stops. Aria's hands shook as she turned pages, searching for more. She found it buried in a stack of miscellaneous documents, a letter, yellowed with age, in a feminine hand she somehow recognized despite having been too young to remember her mother's writing clearly. My dearest daughter. If you are reading this, then I am gone, and you are old enough to seek answers. I pray that day never comes, but I cannot shake the feeling that time is running short. You are not who they will tell you you are. Your father loves you, never doubt that, but he will hide the truth to keep you safe. The Nightshade name carries power, but also danger. My parents were killed for that power, and I fled to protect you. You have a gift, my darling. A gift that sleeps in your blood, waiting. When the time comes, and it will come, trust your wolf. She knows the truth even when your human mind has forgotten. Remember, you are Nightshade. You are more than they will ever let you believe. With all my love, Mother. The letter slipped from Aria's fingers. Nightshade. She was Nightshade. Not some weak, worthless girl with a dormant wolf. She was the granddaughter of murdered alphas, the daughter of a woman who disappeared under suspicious circumstances, carrying a bloodline powerful enough that someone had killed for it. This is insane, Celeste said, her voice shaking. Aria, if this is true, if you're really Nightshade, you're not just eligible for the Luna selection. You might actually be one of the strongest candidates here by blood alone. But why did my father hide it? Arya's voice cracked. Why let me grow up thinking I was nothing? To protect you, probably. If your grandparents were murdered and your mother disappeared, someone didn't want the Nightshade line to continue. Your father made you invisible to keep you safe. It made horrible sense. Her father's overprotectiveness. His insistence that she stay out of pack politics. His grief when he looked at her, maybe not just for losing her mother, but for what hiding the truth had cost them both. And her dormant wolf. Had that been natural, or had someone, suppressed it? Remember who you really are, her wolf had said. Now Arya understood. We need to tell someone, Celeste said urgently. The Alpha King should know. No. Arya grabbed her friend's arm. Not yet. If someone killed my grandparents and drove my mother into hiding, they might still be out there. They might still be dangerous. But. Please, Celeste. I need time to figure this out. To understand what it means. Arya looked at the letter, her mother's words burning into her brain. Promise me you won't tell anyone. Not until I'm ready. Celeste hesitated, then nodded. I promise. But Arya, be careful. If you're right about this, if someone really is threatened by your bloodline, you could be in danger. They gathered the documents carefully, replacing most but keeping the letter. Arya tucked it into her bodice, against her heart, where it felt like both a treasure and a weapon. They left the archives as the sun was setting, painting the palace walls in shades of gold and crimson. Arya's mind spun with revelations, questions, implications. She was Nightshade. Her mother had been murdered, or had her death 12 years ago been natural? Had someone finally found her? And what gift had her mother mentioned? What was sleeping in her blood? Lost in thought, Arya didn't notice when Celeste branched off toward her own chambers. Didn't realize she was alone in the shadowed corridor until she felt it. Eyes watching her from the darkness. Arya spun, her newly awakened wolf bristling with alarm. The hallway was empty, lit only by flickering orbs that cast dancing shadows. But the sensation didn't fade. If anything, it intensified. Hello? Her voice echoed off stone walls. Nothing. Just silence and shadows. But then, in the darkest corner where the orb light didn't quite reach, she saw them. Red eyes. Glowing like embers in the dark. Definitely not wolf. Wolf eyes glowed gold or silver or green, never red. These were something else entirely. Something wrong. Who are you? Arya demanded, her hand moving to the small knife she kept belted at her waist. Show yourself. The eyes didn't move. Didn't blink. Just watched with an intensity that made her skin crawl. Then, just as suddenly as they'd appeared, they vanished. Arya stood frozen, heart hammering, every instinct screaming danger. She waited 30 seconds. A minute. But the presence was gone, leaving only the faint scent of something bitter and unfamiliar in the air. She ran. Back to her chambers, door locked and barred behind her. She checked every shadow, every corner, but found nothing. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had been watching her, whatever owned those red eyes, wasn't finished. Arya sank onto her bed, clutching her mother's letter, and tried to process everything that had happened in one impossible day. She'd survived Morgana's sabotage. Discovered she was Nightshade nobility. And something with red eyes was stalking her through the palace. And through it all, the mate bond hummed in her chest, a connection to an Alpha King who'd rejected her but couldn't seem to stay away. This changes nothing, Theron had said. But everything had changed. Arya just had to figure out how to survive long enough to understand what it all meant. Chapter 4. The formal ball was everything Arya had feared it would be. She stood at the edge of the grand ballroom, watching couples whirl across the marble floor in a blur of silk and jewels. Crystal chandeliers cast everything in golden light, and an orchestra played something classical and elegant that Arya didn't recognize. The remaining candidates, 19 now, after one had withdrawn that morning, all looked like they belonged in a fairy tale. Arya felt like an imposter. Margaret had done her best. The gown was beautiful, deep midnight blue with silver embroidery that caught the light. Her dark hair had been swept up with delicate pins. She even wore borrowed jewelry, sapphires that probably cost more than everything she'd ever owned combined. But no amount of fine clothing could hide what she was, a girl playing dress-up in a world that didn't want her. "You look beautiful," Celeste said, appearing at her elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. "Stop fidgeting with your dress." "I look ridiculous." Arya accepted the champagne gratefully. "Everyone's staring. They're staring because the Alpha King gave you his cloak and defended you in front of the entire court. You're the most interesting person here." Celeste clinked their glasses together. "Enjoy it." Arya took a sip and nearly choked. The champagne was far too expensive for her untrained palate. Celeste laughed. "First time? Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone paying attention." Celeste's expression softened. "You're doing fine, Arya. Better than fine. You survived Morgana's sabotage, solved problems none of the other candidates could, and saved Bethany from serious injury. The Alpha King would be a fool not to see your value. But he'd already made his choice, hadn't he? The mate bond didn't matter. Political alliance did." Across the ballroom, Arya watched Theron move through the crowd. He wore formal black with silver threading that matched his eyes, and he looked every inch the warrior king, dangerous, powerful, untouchable. Morgana had positioned herself at his side, her hand resting possessively on his arm, her platinum hair gleaming like a crown. They looked perfect together. Like they'd been carved from the same marble. Arya's chest ached with something that felt horribly like jealousy. "The dancing will start soon," Celeste said gently. "Tradition dictates that the Alpha King must dance with each candidate. You'll get your turn." "Lucky me," Arya muttered. But the thought of dancing with Theron, of being that close to him, feeling the mate bond flare between them while knowing he'd never choose her, made her want to disappear. She couldn't do it. Couldn't stand there in his arms and pretend her heart wasn't breaking. "I need some air," Arya said abruptly. "Tell them I'm ill if anyone asks." Arya. But she was already moving, slipping through the crowd toward the side exit. No one stopped her. Most people were too focused on the Alpha King and his potential Luna to notice one insignificant candidate disappearing into the shadows. The palace library was blessedly quiet. Arya had discovered it 2 days ago while wandering the halls, and it had quickly become her favorite refuge. Floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with books, comfortable reading chairs positioned near windows that overlooked the gardens, and most importantly, solitude. She kicked off the uncomfortable borrowed shoes and curled up in her favorite chair, pulling her knees to her chest. The midnight blue gown pooled around her like water. Through the window, she could see the ballroom's lights spilling onto the terrace, hear the faint strains of music. She should be there. Should be networking, making alliances, trying to prove herself worthy. That's what her mother's letter had said, wasn't it? You are more than they will ever let you believe. But what good was noble blood if no one knew about it? If revealing it might put a target on her back? Arya pulled the letter from where she kept it tucked in her bodice and read it again by candlelight. Her mother's handwriting was elegant but hurried, like she'd been racing against time. "You have a gift, my darling. A gift that sleeps in your blood, waiting." What gift? Arya had searched her entire life for something special, some sign that she was more than broken and worthless. Her dormant wolf had woken, yes, but that was because of the mate bond. Wasn't it? Trust your wolf. She knows the truth even when your human mind has forgotten. Then tell me, Arya whispered to the empty room. Tell me what I'm supposed to remember. But her wolf remained silent, a presence without words. Frustrating and mysterious as everything else in Arya's life. She was so lost in thought that she didn't hear the door open. Didn't sense the presence until his voice cut through the silence. Running away from your own ball, little wolf? Arya's head snapped up. Theron stood in the doorway, still in his formal attire, silver eyes finding her in the candlelight with unerring accuracy. He looked tired, not physically, but emotionally. Like he was carrying weight that even an alpha king's shoulders struggled to bear. I could ask you the same thing, Your Majesty, Arya said, proud that her voice didn't shake. Shouldn't you be dancing with your potential brides? I've danced with 12 of them. He closed the door behind him with a quiet click. They all said the right things, smiled the right smiles, and bored me to tears. Morgana must have been thrilled. Something flickered in his expression. Morgana is exactly what the council wants. Beautiful, well-bred, politically connected. A perfect Luna. Then why are you here? The question hung between them. Theron moved closer, his footsteps silent on the thick carpet. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that Arya could feel the mate bond stretching between them like a living thing. Because I'd rather talk to someone honest for 5 minutes than pretend for another hour, he said quietly. Because when I saw you slip away, I couldn't stop myself from following. Because apparently, I'm a glutton for punishment. Arya's heart hammered. We shouldn't be alone together. No, we shouldn't. But he didn't leave. Instead, he sank into the chair across from her with a heaviness that spoke of more than physical exhaustion. Tell me something true, Arya. Something you've never told anyone else. The request surprised her. Why? Because I'm surrounded by people who tell me what I want to hear. And I think you might be the only person in this entire palace who won't. Arya studied him in the candlelight. Without the formal mask, without the court watching, he looked younger. More human. She saw the lines of stress around his eyes, the tension in his jaw. The loneliness. I'm afraid, she said finally. All the time. Afraid I'm not enough, that I'll never be enough. That everyone who ever called me worthless was right. Theron's expression shifted, something raw crossing his features. And I'm angry. Constantly. At the war that took 3 years of my life. At the council that treats me like a breeding stud. At fate for giving me a mate I can't have. The words landed like stones in still water. You felt it, Arya whispered. The bond. You felt it and you're rejecting it anyway. I'm not rejecting you. His voice roughened. I'm rejecting the impossible situation we're in. Do you understand what would happen if I chose you? A girl with no pack status, no family connections, no political value? The council would revolt. Half the territory alphas would see it as an insult. I'd be fighting another war within months. Then reject the bond. Arya forced the words out past the tightness in her throat. Break it cleanly so we can both move on. I can't. Why not? Because every time I try, Theron's hands clenched on the arms of the chair. Every time I think about the rejection ceremony, about severing the bond, my wolf loses his mind. He won't allow it. Won't even consider it. And he stopped, jaw tight. You what? I don't want to, he said, the admission torn from somewhere deep. Moon help me, even knowing it's impossible, even knowing what it would cost, I don't want to lose you. Arya's breath caught. The mate bond flared hot and bright between them, responding to the honesty, the vulnerability. She saw it mirrored in Theron's eyes, the same desperate wanting, the same impossible longing. This is torture, she whispered. Feeling this and knowing we can't. I know. Theron stood abruptly, moving to the window. His silhouette cut a sharp line against the moonlight. I've tried everything. Tried to convince myself it's just physical. Tried to focus on duty. Tried to ignore you completely. Nothing works. Maybe we're not supposed to ignore it. Arya set her mother's letter aside and stood, her bare feet silent on the carpet. Maybe fate brought us together for a reason. Fate is cruel. But when Theron turned to face her, the longing in his expression stole her breath. She gave me exactly what I needed and made it impossible to keep. They stood like that, 5 feet of space between them that might as well have been an ocean. The air crackled with tension, with want, with everything they couldn't say and couldn't have. Tell me about the war, Arya said softly, desperate to break the tension before it consumed them both. Everyone says you unified the territories, but no one talks about what it cost. Theron's expression darkened. 3 years. 13 major battles. More deaths than I can count. The rebellion wanted to fracture us back into independent packs, each ruling their own territory. They saw unity as weakness. But you won. I survived. His voice was hollow. There's a difference. Every decision I made during that war, every battle plan, every sacrifice, it changed me. Made me harder. Colder. The council sees a weapon they can point at their enemies. They don't see that weapons break. Arya's heart ached for him. Is that why they want you to choose a mate? To prove you're still capable of something other than war? They want heirs and alliances. They want me to settle down and stop making decisions based on what's right instead of what's profitable. Theron's laugh was bitter. They want me controllable. And Morgana would give them that. Morgana would give them everything. Her father controls the Eastern Territories. A marriage alliance would secure their loyalty for generations. It's the smart choice. The strategic choice. But not what you want. What I want doesn't matter. Theron moved closer, and Arya's pulse jumped. I stopped having that luxury 3 years ago when I took the crown. Everyone has choices. Not me. Not anymore. He was close enough now that Arya could feel the heat radiating from him, could smell pine and winter and that dangerous alpha scent that made her wolf purr. Every choice I make affects thousands of lives. My wants, my needs, they're insignificant compared to that responsibility. You're wrong. The words came out fiercer than Arya intended. You're not just a king. You're a person. You deserve happiness too. Do I? Theron's hand came up, and for a moment Arya thought he would touch her face. But he stopped himself, fingers curling into a fist. After everything I've done? All the blood on my hands? You fought a war to protect your people. That's not something to be ashamed of. Tell that to the widows. The orphans. The warriors who'll never walk again. His voice cracked slightly. I see their faces every night when I close my eyes. Every decision I make, I wonder if it's worth the cost. Theron's expression darkened. 3 years. 13 major battles. More deaths than I can count. The rebellion wanted to fracture us back into independent packs, each ruling their own territory. They saw unity as weakness. But you won. I survived. His voice was hollow. There's a difference. Every decision I made during that war, every battle plan, every sacrifice, it changed me. Made me harder. Colder. The council sees a weapon they can point at their enemies. They don't see that weapons break. Arya's heart ached for him. Is that why they want you to choose a mate? To prove you're still capable of something other than war? They want heirs and alliances. They want me to settle down and stop making decisions based on what's right instead of what's profitable. Theron's laugh was bitter. They want me controllable. And Morgana would give them that. Morgana would give them everything. Her father controls the Eastern Territories. A marriage alliance would secure their loyalty for generations. It's the smart choice. The strategic choice. But not what you want. What I want doesn't matter. Theron moved closer, and Arya's pulse jumped. I stopped having that luxury 3 years ago when I took the crown. Everyone has choices. Not me. Not anymore. He was close enough now that Arya could feel the heat radiating from him, could smell pine and winter and that dangerous alpha scent that made her wolf purr. Every choice I make affects thousands of lives. My wants, my needs, they're insignificant compared to that responsibility. You're wrong. The words came out fiercer than Arya intended. You're not just a king. You're a person. You deserve happiness too. Do I? Theron's hand came up, and for a moment Arya thought he would touch her face. But he stopped himself, fingers curling into a fist. After everything I've done? All the blood on my hands? You fought a war to protect your people. That's not something to be ashamed of. Tell that to the widows. The orphans. The warriors who'll never walk again. His voice cracked slightly. I see their faces every night when I close my eyes. Every decision I make, I wonder if it's worth the cost. Arya understood that burden. Had carried her own version of it after her father died. The guilt of surviving when others didn't. The weight of trying to be worthy of sacrifices made on your behalf. You can't carry that alone, she said quietly. No one can. I have no choice. Yes, you do. Arya reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away. When he didn't, she placed her hand over his heart. The contact sent electricity racing through her, the mate bond singing with approval. You can let someone in. Let someone help carry the weight. Theron's hand covered hers, pressing it tighter to his chest. Through his shirt, she felt his heart pounding as wildly as her own. And if I do? If I let you in and it destroys everything? What then? Then at least you won't be alone when it happens. For a moment, they stood frozen, her hand over his heart, his hand covering hers, the space between them charged with possibility. Arya watched emotions war across his face, desire, duty, fear, longing. Then his control snapped. Theron pulled her into his arms with a desperate hunger that made her gasp. His mouth found hers with bruising intensity, and it was everything, fire and ice, danger and safety, destruction and salvation all at once. Arya melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, her body pressed against his hard strength. The mate bond exploded between them, golden and overwhelming, drowning out every doubt and fear. This was right. This was theirs. Theron's hands tangled in her carefully pinned hair, pulling it free until dark waves tumbled down her back. He kissed her like he was starving, like she was air and he'd been drowning. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard, foreheads pressed together. This is madness, he whispered against her lips. I know. I still can't choose you. The words hit her like ice water. Arya tried to pull back, but Theron held her close, his arms iron bands around her waist. I can't choose you, he repeated, and his voice was raw with anguish. The council will never accept it. You have no pack status, no family name. Choosing you would start a civil war. Everything I fought for, everything I bled for, would be for nothing. Tears burned Arya's eyes. Then reject me. Break the bond and set us both free. I can't do that either. Theron's hand cupped her face with devastating gentleness. My wolf won't allow it. And he stopped, swallowing hard. I'm not strong enough. I should be. I should be able to put duty first, to make the smart choice. But when I look at you, all I can think is mine. Theron. I'm trapped, Arya. Caught between what I want and what I owe. And I'm going to hurt you because I'm too selfish to let you go and too responsible to keep you. Arya's tears spilled over. She understood now, the impossible position he was in, the weight crushing him. He was right. Choosing her would cause chaos. But rejecting the mate bond would destroy them both. There was no way out. She was about to say something, what, she didn't know, when screams shattered the night. They sprang apart, instinct overriding everything else. More screams, coming from the gardens. The sound of running feet, shouting, panic. Theron was moving before Arya could blink, his warriors' training taking over. He threw open the library doors and raced toward the commotion, and Arya, still barefoot, still in her formal gown, ran after him. The ballroom had emptied onto the terrace. Candidates clustered together, some crying, others frozen in shock. Guards surrounded the Alpha King as he pushed through the crowd toward the garden entrance. What happened? Theron's voice carried command and authority. Report. Rogue attack, Your Majesty, a guard said, his face pale. One of the candidates, she was in the gardens inn. Where is she? This way. They followed the guard down a garden path lit by torches. And there, lying on the stone pathway, was Isabel. The pretty redhead who'd been kind to Arya at breakfast. Now her gown was torn and blood-soaked, deep gashes across her shoulder and arm. She was conscious but in shock, her face paper white. Healer, someone shouted. Get the palace healer. He's not in the palace, another voice said frantically. He went to the village for an emergency. Then someone do something. Morgana stood at the edge of the scene, her face calculating rather than concerned. She's bleeding everywhere. Arya pushed through the crowd before she could think better of it. She dropped to her knees beside Isabel, her training, her mother's training, taking over. I need cloth, she said sharply. Something clean. And water. Now. A guard stripped off his jacket and handed it to her. Another ran for water. Arya pressed the fabric against the worst of the wounds, applying steady pressure. Isabel, look at me. Stay with me, okay? Arya kept her voice calm even as her hands worked frantically. The wounds were deep but clean, claw marks from a shifted wolf. You're going to be fine. It came out of nowhere, Isabel whispered, tears streaming down her face. Red eyes. I've never seen a wolf with red eyes. Red eyes. Ice flooded Arya's veins. The same red eyes she'd seen watching her in the corridor. Someone get me Silverleaf, Arya demanded. And Moon Petal if you have it. The wounds need to be treated or they'll fester. The healer has those in his workshop. Then get them. Theron's voice cracked like a whip. Guards scattered immediately. Arya kept pressure on the wounds, her mind racing through everything her mother had taught her. Claw wounds from shifted wolves carried bacteria that regular healing couldn't fight. You needed specific herbs to draw out the infection, specific techniques to seal the skin. The herbs arrived within minutes. Arya crushed them between her palms, mixing them with water to create a paste. She worked quickly, cleaning each wound, applying the mixture, binding everything with strips torn from someone's shirt. This will hurt, she told Isabel. But it will heal clean. Isabel bit back a scream as the herbs took effect, burning away infection. But within moments, the bleeding slowed. The angry red edges of the wounds faded to pink. The paste was working. Arya sat back on her heels, her hands shaking now that the immediate crisis had passed. Her midnight blue gown was ruined, stained with blood and crushed herbs. But Isabel was stable, her breathing easier, color returning to her face. Who taught you that? Theron asked quietly. Arya looked up at him. My mother. Understanding flickered in his eyes, recognition of skills that shouldn't belong to someone supposedly lowborn. But before he could press further, his beta appeared, a massive wolf named Marcus with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. Your Majesty, Marcus said grimly. We need to talk. Privately. They moved away from the crowd. Arya started to stand, to give them space, but Theron's hand caught her wrist. Stay, he said. Not a command. A request. Marcus glanced between them, his expression unreadable. Then he spoke, and his words changed everything. The attack was deliberate. Professional. The rogue knew exactly where Isabel would be, exactly when the gardens would be unguarded. He paused. And the scent. Your Majesty, the rogue's scent was mixed with a familiar pack signature. Someone inside the palace is working with them. Silence crashed over the group. That's impossible, Morgana said, materializing at Theron's elbow. Security is impenetrable. No one could. Someone did. Marcus's voice was flat. And there's more. The rogue left a message carved into a tree near the attack site. What message? Theron asked. Marcus's eyes found Arya, and something in his expression made her blood run cold. It said, "The Nightshade dies tonight." The world tilted. Nightshade. They'd used her mother's bloodline name. Which meant they knew. Knew who she really was, knew what she carried in her veins. And they'd tried to kill her. Except they'd attacked Isabel instead. They made a mistake, Arya said slowly, pieces clicking into place. In the dark, informal gowns, were similar height, similar build. They thought Isabel was me. Theron's hand tightened on her wrist. Why would rogues be targeting you specifically? Arya looked at him, at Marcus, at the growing crowd of candidates and guards and council members. All watching. All listening. If she told them the truth, about her mother, about her bloodline, there would be no going back. But the alternative was letting someone else die in her place. Because, Arya said quietly, my mother was Lillian Nightshade. First daughter of the Northern High Pack. Her parents were murdered 25 years ago, and she disappeared to protect me. She pulled the letter from her bodice, the paper crumpled now, stained with Isabel's blood. I found this in the palace archives. Someone killed my grandparents for power. And now they want to finish what they started. Absolute silence. Then Morgana laughed, a sound like breaking glass. That's ridiculous. If you were Nightshade, someone would have known. You're nobody. A girl with a dormant wolf playing dress-up. My wolf was suppressed, Arya said, the truth crystallizing even as she spoke it. Someone, suppressed it when my mother died to keep me hidden. But the mate bond woke it up again. Theron's eyes locked onto hers. She watched understanding dawn, watched him put together all the pieces, her healing knowledge, her wolf's sudden awakening, the attacks, the red eyes. Marcus, Theron said, his voice deadly calm. Lock down the palace. No one enters or leaves without my direct permission. Double the guard on all candidates, especially Arya. And find me whoever left that message. Your Majesty. Now. Marcus bowed and disappeared with his guards. The crowd began to murmur, shock and speculation spreading like wildfire. Morgana stepped forward, her face a mask of concern that didn't reach her eyes. Your Majesty, surely you don't believe this fantasy? It's clearly a ploy for attention. Be very careful with your next words, Lady Morgana. Theron's voice could have frozen steel. Someone just tried to murder one of my candidates. The only thing keeping you here is the fact that you were in my sight the entire evening. Morgana's face went white. Theron turned to Arya, and the intensity in his silver eyes made her breath catch. You should have told me. I only found out yesterday. I was trying to understand what it meant before. Before someone tried to kill you. His hand cupped her face, the gesture intimate and possessive in front of everyone. The mate bond thrummed between them, and Arya saw several council members' eyes widen in recognition. This changes everything. Does it? Arya whispered. Theron's thumb brushed her cheekbone. If you're Nightshade, you have more claim to nobility than half the candidates here. You're not powerless. You're not worthless. You're a target, Arya finished. Someone wants me dead, Theron. And they're using rogues to do it. That means it's organized. Funded. Dangerous. Then I'll protect you. You can't. Not without revealing the mate bond. Not without. I don't care. The words rang out clear and absolute. Let them all know. Let the council object. Let the territory alphas threaten war. You're mine, and I will burn down anyone who tries to take you from me. The declaration sent shockwaves through the assembled crowd. Arya saw Celeste gaping, saw Morgana's face contort with fury, saw council members exchanging alarmed looks. The Alpha King had just claimed his mate in front of everyone. There was no taking it back now. Chapter 5. The interrogation room was cold, despite the fire crackling in the hearth. Arya sat in a high-backed chair, still wearing her blood-stained gown, while 3 council members circled her like wolves sizing up wounded prey. Theron stood near the window, his jaw tight, silver eyes tracking every movement. He'd wanted to be the one questioning her, but the council had insisted on protocol. As if protocol mattered when someone was trying to kill her. "Walk us through it again," Counselor Aldrich said, his aged face creased with suspicion. "You left the ball, went to the library, and the Alpha King followed you there?" "Yes." Arya kept her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "They'd been at this for an hour." "And what were you discussing in the library?" "Alone. Unchaperoned." "That's irrelevant," Theron cut in, his voice sharp as a blade. "With respect, Your Majesty, nothing is irrelevant when one candidate has been attacked and another," Aldrich gestured at Arya, was conveniently first on the scene with medical knowledge far beyond her supposed station. "I saved Isabel's life," Arya said. "Or you inflicted the wounds and then saved her to appear heroic." This came from Counselor Vera, a severe woman with iron gray hair. "We only have your word that you were in the library when the attack occurred." "She was with me," Theron said, his tone deadly. "That's not her word. That's mine." "For how long?" Aldrich pressed. "The attack lasted mere minutes." "Could she not have orchestrated it beforehand? Set the rogue in motion, then return to establish an alibi?" Arya's hands clenched in her lap. "Why would I attack someone and leave a message with my own bloodline name carved into a tree? Perhaps to deflect suspicion. Perhaps this entire Nightshade story is fabricated." "Enough." Theron moved away from the window with predatory grace. "Arya is the victim here, not the suspect. Someone tried to kill her and struck Isabel by mistake. That's the investigation we should be conducting." "Your Majesty," Vera said carefully, "your attachment to this candidate is clouding your judgment. The mate bond has nothing to do with facts." Theron's eyes flashed silver. "Arya's mother's records are in our own archives. The letter is genuine, I had our head archivist verify it. Someone murdered the Nightshade Alphas 25 years ago, and now that same someone is trying to finish the bloodline. Those are the facts." "If she even is Nightshade," Aldrich muttered. "All we have is a convenient letter and a girl's word." The door burst open. Margaret rushed in, her usual composure shattered. "Your Majesty, forgive the interruption, but Lady Helena Whitmore and her daughter have arrived at the palace gates. They're demanding an audience." Arya's blood turned to ice. Theron's expression darkened. "I expelled them from the selection. They have no business here." "They claim to have evidence," Margaret said, wringing her hands. "Evidence regarding Miss Arya's heritage. They say it's urgent." The council members exchanged meaningful looks. Aldrich stood straighter. "Your Majesty, given the circumstances, perhaps we should hear what they have to say." "No," Arya said, finding her voice. "This is a trap. Helena hates me. Whatever she's brought is a lie designed to—" "If it's a lie, it will be exposed," Vera interrupted. "But if there's evidence that contradicts your claims, Your Majesty, you need to see it before making any decisions regarding this girl's status." Theron looked at Arya, and she saw the conflict in his eyes. The mate bond urged him to protect her, to trust her. But his duty demanded he investigate all leads. "Bring them to the council chamber," he said finally. "Under guard. And Marcus," he gestured to his beta, who'd been standing silently by the door. "I want you in that room. Your instincts are sharper than theirs." Marcus nodded, his dark eyes unreadable. The council chamber was designed to intimidate: soaring ceilings, ancient tapestries depicting great battles, and a massive table carved from a single tree that had stood when the first Alphas walked these lands. Helena swept in like she owned it. She wore widow's black despite having been remarried for years, and her face was arranged in an expression of sorrowful duty. Vivian trailed behind her, similarly dressed, playing the role of concerned daughter. Arya wanted to laugh at the performance. Or scream. She wasn't sure which. "Your Majesty." Helena curtsied deeply. "Thank you for seeing us. I know our presence must be unwelcome, given recent events. Get to the point, Lady Helena, Theron said coldly. You were expelled from this selection for assaulting a candidate. The only reason you're not in a cell is my mercy. Don't test it. Helena's smile never wavered. Of course, Your Majesty. I come only out of duty, painful duty, to correct a terrible deception before it damages the throne itself. She produced a leather folder from her bag and placed it on the table. Aldrich reached for it, but Theron got there first. He opened it, his expression unreadable as he scanned the contents. Arya's heart hammered. What had Helena forged? What lies had she constructed? According to this document, Theron said slowly, Lillian Whitmore, Arya's mother, was not Nightshade at all, but a rogue wolf who seduced James Whitmore under false pretenses. He looked up, his silver eyes cold. This is a registry entry from the Western Border Pact claiming Lillian had no pack affiliation when she married. A lie, Arya said immediately. My mother was. Your mother was a very clever woman, Helena interrupted, her voice dripping with false sympathy. She convinced my husband, my poor, grieving husband after his first wife died, that she was nobility fallen on hard times. But the truth is she was nothing. A rogue with delusions of grandeur who filled your head with the same fantasies. That's not true. Arya stood, her chair scraping back. I have her letter. I have the marriage records from the archives. Records can be falsified, Vivian said sweetly. Especially by someone desperate to seem important. You've always been desperate, Arya. Desperate for attention, for status, for someone to tell you that you matter. The cruelty in her stepsister's voice was almost admirable in its purity. But it was the doubt Arya saw creeping into the council members' faces that truly terrified her. This is convenient timing, Marcus spoke for the first time, his deep voice cutting through the tension. You're expelled from the selection in disgrace, and suddenly you have evidence that just happens to discredit the girl who witnessed your cruelty? Helena turned to him with wounded dignity. I understand your suspicion, Beta Marcus. Truly. But I've lived with this guilt for years. When my husband died, he made me promise to care for Arya, and I did. Despite knowing she was the daughter of a woman who lied her way into our family. Despite the shame it brought us. She dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. But I cannot, I will not, stand by and watch her perpetrate the same deception on the Alpha King himself. How noble, Theron said, his tone making it clear he thought anything but. Tell me, Lady Helena, if you've known this truth for years, why bring it forward now? Why not reveal it when Arya first entered the selection? Helena's expression flickered. Just for a moment, Arya saw calculation beneath the mask. Because I hoped she would withdraw on her own. That she would realize her place and leave without causing unpleasantness. But now she's claiming to be Nightshade royalty, endangering the selection itself with her fantasies. I had no choice but to speak. Convenient, Marcus said again. Beta Marcus, Aldrich interrupted, with respect, Lady Helena has provided documentation. Documentation that directly contradicts Miss Arya's claims. At minimum, this requires investigation. I agree, Vera said. Until we can verify which records are genuine, perhaps Miss Arya should be sequestered. For her own safety, of course. Sequestered, Arya repeated. You mean imprisoned? Isolated, Vera corrected primly. Until the truth is established. No. Theron's voice cracked like a whip. Arya remains under my protection. If you want to investigate records, do it. But she stays free, and she stays in the selection. Your Majesty. That's my final word on the matter. Theron stood, and the sheer dominance radiating from him made everyone in the room step back. Lady Helena, you will leave these documents and depart immediately. If I find you falsified evidence. Everything is genuine, Your Majesty, Helena said quickly. I only want the truth. She curtsied again and swept out, Vivian trailing behind with one last venomous look at Arya. The moment the door closed, Arya felt the weight of suspicious stares. The council members didn't believe her. Helena's performance had been too perfect, her evidence too timely. I'm telling the truth, Arya said, hating how desperate she sounded. My mother was Nightshade. The letter is real. The marriage records will be verified, Theron said firmly. Marcus, I want you personally investigating this. Pull every record we have on the Nightshade line. Talk to any living wolves who knew them. Find me proof that can't be questioned. Marcus bowed. It will take time, Your Majesty. The Nightshade Alphas died 25 years ago. Witnesses will be scarce. Then find them anyway. Theron's eyes met Arya's, and she saw the promise there. He believed her. Even if no one else did, he believed her. This council is dismissed. Marcus worked through the night. Arya knew because she couldn't sleep either, pacing her chambers while guards stood outside her door. Protection or imprisonment, she wasn't sure. Every shadow seemed to hold threat. Every sound made her jump. The red eyes haunted her. The message carved into the tree, the Nightshade dies tonight. Someone wanted her dead. And now Helena had given them the perfect cover. If Arya died under suspicious circumstances, everyone would assume she was just a desperate fraud who'd gotten in over her head. A knock on her door made her spin. Come in. Celeste slipped inside, her face pale. I'm not supposed to be here. The council ordered all candidates to stay in their chambers until this is sorted out, but I had to check on you. I'm fine. Arya managed a weak smile. Just contemplating how my life became a disaster. Helena's lying. Celeste's voice was fierce. I don't know what game she's playing, but I read those marriage records with you. Your mother was Nightshade. Try telling the council that. Marcus will find proof. He's the best investigator in the territory. Another knock, harder this time. The door opened before Arya could respond, and Marcus himself stepped in. He looked exhausted but grimly satisfied. I found something, he said without preamble. Something Helena didn't know about. Arya's heart leaped. What? Marcus pulled out a leather journal, old, worn, the kind used for official pack business decades ago. This belonged to Alpha Thomas Blackwood, Theron's father. He kept meticulous records of all political dealings. He opened it to a marked page, including this entry from 23 years ago. He turned the book so Arya could read. Today I met with Seraphina Nightshade in secret. The daughter of Marcus Nightshade has uncovered a conspiracy within the Northern Pack, a plan to overthrow my rule and fracture the territories. She came to me at great personal risk, bringing evidence of the traitors involved. I've promised her protection, but she insists on disappearing with her infant daughter until the threat is neutralized. I pray the moon goddess keeps them safe. The names she gave me will haunt my remaining days. Arya's hands shook as she read. Seraphina. That was my grandmother's name. My mother was named for her. Your mother wasn't just Nightshade, Marcus said quietly. She was Lillian Seraphina Nightshade, first daughter of Alpha Marcus and Luna Seraphina Nightshade. The records all match, once you know what to look for. But the conspiracy, Celeste breathed. She discovered a conspiracy against the Alpha King? Against Theron's father, yes. And apparently, she went into hiding to protect her daughter, to protect you. Marcus's eyes met Arya's. Your mother fled south, changed her name, married James Whitmore to establish a new identity. She was protecting you from whoever wanted to overthrow the throne. But they found her anyway, Arya whispered. The pieces were falling into place now, horrible and inevitable. She died when I was 10. Everyone said it was an accident, she fell while hiking. But it wasn't an accident, was it? Marcus's expression confirmed her worst fears. I pulled the death report. The injuries were consistent with a fall, but there were inconsistencies. Marks that could have been from a struggle. It was ruled accidental, but the investigating officer noted concerns. They murdered her. Rage and grief warred in Arya's chest. They murdered her to stop her from talking, to stop her from, what? Coming forward eventually? And they tried to kill you last night, Marcus continued. Because you're the last living Nightshade heir. If the conspiracy is still active, and the attack suggests it is, you're a threat to their power. But what power? Arya demanded. My grandparents died 25 years ago. The Northern Pack was absorbed into the territories. What do they gain from killing me now? That's what we need to find out. Marcus closed the journal carefully. But I have another piece of the puzzle. Your father, James Whitmore, wasn't just some random wolf your mother married. He was a former member of the Royal Guard. One of the Alpha King's most trusted warriors. Arya's breath caught. What? He retired from service the same year your mother disappeared. Theron's father gave him land in the Western Border Pack, a title, everything he needed to establish a new life. It wasn't random, Arya. It was arranged. The Alpha King put his own warrior in place to protect you and your mother. Then why did my father never tell me? Tears burned Arya's eyes. Why let me grow up thinking I was nobody? Because that was the only way to keep you safe. Marcus's voice gentled. If no one knew who you were, the conspirators couldn't find you. Your father died when you were 17, and your wolf went dormant around the same time. That wasn't coincidence. I don't understand. Someone suppressed your wolf. Marcus said it like he was delivering a death sentence. There are old dark magics, forbidden rituals that can suppress a wolf spirit. It's agonizing for the wolf, like being buried alive. But it makes the person invisible. Undetectable to other wolves. Your father's death left you vulnerable, so someone, we don't know who yet, suppressed your wolf to keep you hidden. Arya felt sick. Her wolf had been tortured. Locked away in darkness for 5 years, not because she was weak or broken, but because someone was trying to protect her. And Helena, she asked hoarsely. Where does she fit into this? Marcus's expression hardened. That's the question, isn't it? She married your father 3 years after your mother died. She had to know something. Your father wouldn't have married someone without vetting her thoroughly. But whether she was working with the conspirators or just an opportunist who figured out your secret, I can't say yet. She knew, Arya said with certainty. She knew exactly who I was, and she spent 5 years making sure I stayed invisible. Keeping me out of pack politics, preventing me from attending any official functions, telling me I was worthless. She was reinforcing the suppression. But she made a mistake, Celeste said suddenly. She let you come to the selection. If she wanted you hidden, why allow that? Because she thought I'd fail immediately and return home. Arya's laugh was bitter. She never expected the Alpha King to defend me. Never expected. She trailed off, unwilling to say the mate bond in front of Marcus, even though he probably already knew. Marcus studied her with those sharp dark eyes. There's one more thing you need to know. The journal, it lists names. The conspirators your mother uncovered 23 years ago. He paused. Some of them are still alive. Still in positions of power. Still in this palace. The room went silent. Who? Arya whispered. That's what I'm taking to the Alpha King right now. But Arya, Marcus's expression was grave. Until we know who we can trust, you're in more danger than ever. Someone in this palace, someone with access to the candidates, orchestrated that attack last night. They're close. They're watching. And they won't stop until you're dead. As if to punctuate his words, a howl split the night, long, mournful, and far too close to be coming from outside the palace walls. It was answered by another howl. Then another. Marcus swore and moved to the window. In the courtyard below, figures were running. Shouting. The clash of steel rang out. We're under attack, he said, his voice deadly calm. Stay here. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone except. The door burst open. Theron stood there in full battle gear, silver eyes blazing. Marcus, I need you on the west wall. Rogues have breached the outer defenses. How many? At least 20. Professional, organized, and they're heading straight for the candidate's wing. Theron's gaze found Arya, and the raw protectiveness in his expression stole her breath. You're coming with me. Your Majesty, if she's the target. Then I'm putting her where I can see her. Where I can protect her. Theron's hand found Arya's, pulling her toward the door. The safest place in this palace is at my side, and that's where she's staying. Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but another crash from below made the decision for him. The council chamber. It's defensible, and the walls are reinforced. Good. Take Celeste and the other candidates there. Arya stays with me. They ran. Through corridors filled with guards mobilizing, past candidates being herded to safety by palace staff, down staircases echoing with the sounds of battle growing closer. Arya's bare feet slapped against cold stone. She'd never put shoes back on after the ball, but she didn't slow down. Theron led her to a room she'd never seen before, small, circular, with weapons lining the walls and a single window overlooking the main courtyard. A war room. Stay away from the window, Theron commanded, moving to a weapons rack. He tossed her a dagger. Know how to use this? Pointed at the enemy. His smile was sharp and feral. Good enough. But it won't come to that. I won't let them touch you. Theron, Arya caught his arm as he moved past. Marcus found proof. My mother really was Nightshade. She discovered a conspiracy against your father and went into hiding to protect me. She was murdered, and now they're trying to finish what they started. Theron's expression shifted, rage and understanding warring across his features. The conspirators are here. In my palace. Yes. Some of them, at least. Marcus has names from your father's journal. Names that will explain why tonight's attack is so well coordinated. Why they know exactly where to strike. Theron cupped her face with both hands, the gesture fierce and possessive. You're not just my mate, Arya. You're the missing piece of a 20-year-old murder. The key to unmasking traitors who've been hiding in plain sight for decades. I'm a target, Arya corrected. Everyone around me is in danger. Then I'll kill anyone who comes for you. Not a boast. A promise. You're mine. Mine to protect, mine to defend, mine to keep safe. And I will burn this entire palace to the ground before I let them take you. The mate bond flared between them, golden and absolute. Arya felt his determination, his fury, his unwavering commitment. He meant every word. We need to find the journal, she said. The names Marcus found. Marcus will bring it to the council chamber. Once the attack is repelled, we'll know exactly who betrayed us. Theron's thumb brushed her cheekbone, the gesture tender despite the violence raging outside. But first, we survive. Another crash, closer now. Shouting. The sound of claws on stone. Theron moved to the door, his body a wall between Arya and whatever was coming. His posture shifted, and she felt the power gathering around him, the pure dominance of an alpha king preparing for battle. Come then, he said to the darkness beyond the door. Come for her. And learn what it means to face a mate defending what's his. The door exploded inward, and the night descended into blood and fury. Chapter 6. The Great Hall had never been so silent. Every wolf in the territory seemed to have crowded into the massive space, nobles, warriors, common pack members, all pressing close to hear the Alpha King's announcement. Arya stood beside Theron on the raised platform, acutely aware of hundreds of eyes on her, acutely aware that her life was about to change forever. Again. The attack 3 nights ago had been repelled, but not before 5 guards were injured and 2 candidates fled the selection in terror. The palace was still on lockdown, security tripled, and tension hung in the air like smoke. Now Theron was about to throw gasoline on that fire. 23 years ago, Theron said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall, Alpha Marcus Nightshade and Luna Seraphina Nightshade were murdered in what was officially ruled a territorial dispute. Their daughter, Lillian, disappeared shortly after. The Northern High Pack was absorbed into the territories, and the Nightshade line was thought to be extinct. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Arya felt Morgana's glare from where she stood among the remaining candidates, felt the council members' tension, felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. It wasn't extinct, Theron continued. Lillian Nightshade fled south to protect her infant daughter from the conspirators who'd murdered her parents. She changed her name, married a warrior sworn to protect her, and lived in hiding for 12 years before those same conspirators found and killed her. Gasps now. Shocked whispers. Arya kept her chin up, refusing to show weakness even as her heart hammered. That daughter, Theron said, turning to look at her with an expression that was both gentle and fierce, is Arya Nightshade. The last living heir of the Northern High Pack. The rightful Alpha bloodline, and my mate. The hall exploded. Not with violence, but with sound, shouting, arguing, disbelief and anger and shock all rolled into a cacophony that made Arya's ears ring. She watched nobles surge to their feet, watched council members exchange furious looks, watched Morgana's face contort with such rage that for a moment Arya thought she might shift right there. Silence. Theron's alpha command cracked through the noise like lightning. Everyone froze. I have documentation. Testimony. My own father's journal describing the conspiracy and his efforts to protect Seraphina Nightshade. Anyone who questions Arya's heritage can review the evidence themselves. But the facts are not in dispute. Your Majesty, Counselor Aldrich rose, his aged face flushed with anger. Even if this girl is Nightshade, which I'm not conceding, it changes nothing. The Northern Pack no longer exists. She has no territory, no warriors, no pack to lead. She's a symbolic heir at best. She's royalty, Theron said flatly. Highborn nobility with a stronger claim to leadership than half the candidates here. And she's my mate. The selection is over. You can't be serious. This from Lady Morgana, who'd abandoned all pretense of decorum. You're throwing away political alliances, territory agreements, everything we've worked for because of some dusty records about a dead pack. I'm honoring the mate bond the moon goddess herself decreed, Theron replied, his voice cold enough to freeze blood. If that bothers you, take it up with her. This is madness. Another council member, Lord Brennan, shot to his feet. Your Majesty, think about what you're doing. The Silvercrest Alliance alone is worth 3 territories. If you reject Lady Morgana for this nobody pretending to be. Finish that sentence, Theron said softly, and you'll regret it. Brennan sat down fast. But Arya could see the damage was done. Half the hall looked furious. The other half looked uncertain. And the council looked like they were already planning how to undermine this decision. Theron raised his hand for silence again. I'm not asking for your approval. I'm informing you of facts. Arya Nightshade is my mate and will be my Luna. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me personally. Preferably in the training ring. The threat was clear. No one moved. This audience is concluded. Theron took Arya's hand, the gesture public and possessive. The formal Luna ceremony will take place at the next full moon. Until then, Arya is under my direct protection. Any threat to her is a threat to me. He led her off the platform and through the crowd, which parted hastily. Arya felt their stares, some hostile, some curious, some calculating. But she kept her head high, kept her hand in Theron's, and tried not to think about how many people in this room might want her dead. That went well, Arya said once they were safely in Theron's private study, guards posted outside. Theron laughed, a harsh sound without humor. Define, well. No one attacked me during the announcement. That's a win in my book. The day's not over yet. But his expression softened as he pulled her into his arms. Are you all right? I know that was terrifying. Overwhelming. Like being thrown to wolves. Arya rested her forehead against his chest, breathing in his scent. I'm fine. Just processing. We could have waited. Made the announcement more gradually. No. Arya pulled back to look at him. If we'd waited, the conspirators would have had more time to plan. This way, they're off balance. Scrambling. Maybe they'll make mistakes. Or maybe they'll escalate. Theron's jaw tightened. I put a target on your back today. Made you visible to every enemy we have. I was already visible. Someone carved my bloodline name into a tree and tried to kill me, remember? Arya touched his face, feeling the tension in him. This was the right move. If I'm going to be a target anyway, at least now everyone knows why. Before Theron could respond, a sharp knock interrupted them. Marcus entered without waiting for permission, his expression grim. We have a problem, he said. Lady Helena is requesting an audience. She says she has information about the conspiracy. Arya's blood ran cold. It's a trap. Probably, Marcus agreed. But if there's even a chance she knows something useful. Bring her, Theron said. Under heavy guard. And search her thoroughly. If she's carrying anything that could be used as a weapon or poison, I want to know about it. Marcus bowed and left. Theron turned back to Arya, his expression conflicted. You don't have to be here for this, he said gently. I know she hurt you. Which is exactly why I need to be here. Arya straightened her spine. She's played games with my life for 5 years. I want to hear what she has to say. 20 minutes later, Helena was brought in flanked by 4 guards. She looked smaller than Arya remembered, diminished somehow, her usual polished appearance replaced by something closer to fear. Good. Your Majesty. Helena curtsied deeply, not meeting anyone's eyes. Thank you for seeing me. I'm not interested in pleasantries, Theron said coldly. Marcus said you have information. Talk. Helena's hands twisted together. I was paid. To keep Arya weak. To make sure she never discovered who she really was. The words hung in the air like poison. Who paid you? Theron's voice could have cut glass. I don't know names. Everything was done through intermediaries, letters, payments left in dead drops. But the instructions were clear: marry James Whitmore, gain his trust, and when he died, make sure his daughter stayed invisible. Helena finally looked at Arya, and there might have been genuine shame in her eyes. They wanted you broken. Submissive. Convinced you were worthless so you'd never question your place in the world. And the wolf suppression? Arya asked, proud that her voice didn't shake. Was that you too? No. That was already done by the time I married your father. Someone else, I don't know who, had already performed the ritual. My job was just to reinforce it. Keep you isolated, keep you doubting yourself. Helena's voice dropped. I'm not proud of what I did. But they threatened Vivian. Said if I didn't cooperate, she'd be next. So you sacrificed me to protect your daughter. Arya felt surprisingly little emotion about it. Just cold, hard clarity. How much did they pay you? Enough to keep us comfortable. Enough to make sure Vivian had every advantage. Helena's face crumpled. I told myself you were just collateral damage. That you weren't really my family, so it didn't matter. But after what happened at the selection, after seeing you there, seeing what you survived, I realized I'd helped create a monster. You are the monster, Arya said quietly. You took a grieving child and systematically destroyed her for money. Don't pretend you've suddenly grown a conscience. Helena flinched. You're right. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm only here because I'm afraid. The people who paid me, they sent another letter 3 days ago. They said my usefulness had ended. That I knew too much. Her voice shook. They're going to kill me. And probably Vivian too, just to tie up loose ends. Good, Marcus said flatly. Save us the trouble. Wait. Theron held up a hand. Helena, these letters, do you still have them? Some of them. I kept copies, just in case. They're hidden in my estate. Marcus, send a team to retrieve them. Immediately. Theron's eyes never left Helena. If you're lying about any of this, if this is another manipulation. It's not. Helena's composure cracked completely. I swear on Vivian's life, it's the truth. I don't know who's behind the conspiracy, but they're powerful enough to reach into every corner of the territory. Powerful enough to make people disappear. And they want Arya dead more than anything. Why? Arya demanded. Why am I such a threat? My grandparents died 25 years ago. The Northern Pack is gone. What do they gain from killing me? I don't know, Helena whispered. But whatever it is, they're willing to burn down everything to make sure you never find out. The next 2 days were a blur of investigation and revelation. The letters Marcus's team retrieved from Helena's estate were damning, coded instructions, payment receipts, threats veiled in polite language. But they also provided clues. References to the council that suggested the conspiracy went higher than anyone had imagined. Mentions of the old agreement that dated back to before Arya was born. And then the real bombshell, Counselor Aldrich's personal seal on one of the payment authorizations. He didn't even try to hide it, Marcus said, spreading the documents across Theron's desk. Arrogant bastard thought he was untouchable. He was, Theron said grimly. For 25 years, he was. My father trusted him. I trusted him. And all along he was orchestrating murders and conspiracies right under our noses. It's not just Aldrich. Arya pointed to another document. This reference to the head elder, that has to be Elder Cornelius. He's been on the council since before your father's time. And Lord Brennan. Marcus added another document to the pile. His signature is on a requisition for dark magic supplies, including the specific components needed for wolf suppression rituals. The pieces were falling into place, painting a picture of corruption so deep it made Arya's head spin. The conspiracy wasn't just a few rogues and hired mercenaries. It was woven into the very structure of power in the territory. We arrest them tonight, Theron decided. All three, simultaneously. No warning, no chance to flee or destroy evidence. They'll have allies, Marcus warned. Guards loyal to them, warriors they've bought over the years. This could turn bloody. Then it turns bloody. Theron's expression was cold. They murdered Arya's family. They've been undermining my rule for years. They tried to kill my mate. I don't care how messy it gets, they're done. Marcus nodded and left to coordinate the arrests. The moment the door closed, Arya felt something shift in her chest. Her wolf, growing stronger every day since the mate bond had awakened her, suddenly surged forward with primal intensity. Arya? Theron was at her side instantly. What's wrong? My wolf, Arya gasped as power flooded through her. Not painful, but overwhelming. Like a dam breaking after years of holding back an ocean. She's, oh gods. Her vision sharpened. Her hearing amplified. She felt every heartbeat in the palace, smelled the approach of wolves 3 floors down, sensed the moon's pull even though it was afternoon. The suppression ritual that had locked her wolf away was finally, completely breaking apart. And what emerged was far more powerful than anyone had imagined. Your eyes, Theron breathed. Arya, your eyes are glowing. Arya caught her reflection in the window. Her eyes had gone from brown to molten gold, not the normal gold of a wolf's eyes, but something brighter, more intense. Ancient power stared back at her, and she understood with sudden clarity what her mother's letter had meant. You have a gift. A gift that sleeps in your blood. She wasn't just nightshade nobility. She was something more. Something older. An alpha bloodline that dated back to the first wolves, carrying power that most modern packs had forgotten existed. I'm an alpha, she said wonderingly. A true alpha. The suppression ritual didn't just lock away my wolf, it locked away my birthright. Theron's expression shifted from concern to something like awe. That's why they wanted you dead. Not just because you're Nightshade, but because you're a threat to their power structure. An alpha female with a legitimate claim to territory. More than that. Arya felt her wolf settle slightly, the initial surge of power evening out into something she could almost control. The Northern Pack territories, they were never properly absorbed, were they? They were taken. Stolen by whoever orchestrated my grandparents' murder. And if you're alive, if you claim your birthright, they lose everything they stole. Land, resources, power. Everything they've built over 25 years crumbles. Arya's hands clenched. That's why the conspiracy runs so deep. It's not just about old grudges. It's about maintaining an empire built on theft and murder. A knock on the door interrupted them. Marcus entered again, but something about his expression made Arya's newly awakened instinct scream warning. The teams are ready, Marcus said. We'll arrest the conspirators within the hour. Good. Theron moved toward his desk. I want personal confirmation when each target is secured. There's one problem, Marcus continued, and his voice had changed. Gone cold. The conspiracy isn't quite what we thought. Theron turned slowly. Explain. My family. Marcus's expression twisted with something dark and bitter. My parents, my siblings, all killed in the war you waged to take the throne. You called them rebels. Traitors. But they were just wolves trying to protect their territory from a tyrant's son who wanted to rule everything. The room went deadly silent. Arya's wolf snarled a warning, but it was too late. Marcus moved with blurring speed, a knife appearing in his hand as he lunged, not at Theron, but at Arya. She barely dodged, her newfound alpha reflexes the only thing saving her from a blade through the heart. The knife scored across her shoulder instead, burning like fire. Marcus. Theron's roar shook the windows. He threw himself between them, his alpha power exploding outward. What are you doing? What I should have done years ago. Marcus's eyes had gone cold as winter. Your father killed my family. You continued his legacy of conquest and control. And now you're trying to legitimize your rule by mating with the last Nightshade, the one bloodline everyone would accept as worthy. It's brilliant strategy. And I can't let it happen. You were my friend. The betrayal in Theron's voice was devastating. My brother in everything but blood. I was your weapon. Marcus spat. The loyal beta who did your dirty work, who buried his own grief and rage to serve the man who destroyed everything he loved. Do you know what that cost me? Do you have any idea? So you orchestrated the attacks. Arya pressed her hand to her bleeding shoulder, her mind racing. The rogues, the message carved in the tree, Isabel's injuries, all of it was you. I fed information to people who wanted the same thing I wanted, to watch your little romance burn. To make sure the Nightshade line ended before it could legitimize the Blackwood dynasty. Marcus's smile was terrible. I've been planning this for 3 years. Every move, every strategy. Building alliances with Aldrich and the other conspirators. Positioning myself perfectly to destroy you both from the inside. The journal, Theron said, understanding dawning. You're the one who showed us my father's journal. You controlled what we found. I showed you just enough to make you think you were ahead of the conspiracy. Just enough to make you trust me completely before I struck. Marcus shifted his grip on the knife. And now I'm going to finish what should have been done 25 years ago. I'm going to kill the last Nightshade, and when Theron tries to avenge her, I'll kill him too. The territory will fracture. The Blackwood line will end. And maybe, my family can finally rest. He attacked again, and this time there was no hesitation, no mercy. Just cold, efficient brutality aimed at killing Arya as quickly as possible. Theron intercepted him with a snarl of pure rage. They collided with bone-crushing force, two warriors who'd trained together for years, who knew each other's every move and weakness. The fight was vicious and heartbreaking, brothers destroying each other, friendships shattered beyond repair. Arya scrambled back, clutching her bleeding shoulder, watching in horror as the two men she'd trusted most tried to kill each other. They were matched in skill, but Theron had the alpha power advantage. Marcus had fury and the element of surprise. They crashed through furniture, shattered windows, painted the walls with blood. Marcus fought like a man with nothing to lose. Theron fought like a mate defending what was his. You don't have to do this. Theron pinned Marcus against the wall, his hand around his former beta's throat. Marcus, please, we can find another way. There is no other way. Marcus's eyes were wild. This ends tonight. Either I die, or she does. Choose. Then you die. Theron's voice broke on the words. Moon, forgive me, you die. The killing blow was quick. Merciful, considering. Theron's claws extended, and in one brutal motion, he tore out Marcus's throat. Marcus collapsed, blood spreading across the floor in a dark pool. He looked up at Theron with something that might have been relief in his dying eyes. Finally, he whispered. Finally, it's over. Then he was gone. Theron stood over his best friend's body, breathing hard, covered in blood, Marcus's and his own. For a long moment, he didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stared at what he'd been forced to do. Then his legs gave out. Arya was there instantly, catching him, holding him as the full weight of the betrayal crashed down on them both. Theron didn't cry, Alpha Kings didn't cry, but the sound that tore from his throat was worse than any tears. He was my brother, Theron said hoarsely. For 10 years, he was my brother. I know. Arya held him tighter, her own tears falling freely. I know. Guards burst through the door, weapons drawn. They took in the scene, their Alpha King covered in blood, Marcus dead on the floor, Arya injured, and froze. Get the healer, Arya said, her voice steadier than she felt. And secure the palace. Marcus was feeding information to conspirators. We don't know who else might be compromised. The guards scattered to obey. Arya stayed with Theron, holding the man who'd just killed his best friend to save her life. The man who'd lost so much already and kept losing more. The conspiracy is bigger than we thought, she said quietly. Marcus had allies. People who felt the same way he did about your father's war, about the territory unification. This isn't over. I know. Theron pulled back slightly, his silver eyes devastated but clearing with grim determination. Aldrich, Cornelius, Brennan, they're just the ones we know about. There could be dozens more. Hundreds. Then we find them. Arya touched his face, making him look at her. We root out every traitor, expose every conspirator. We finish what my mother started 23 years ago. Together? Together. She kissed him gently, tasting blood and tears and unbreakable resolve. You're not alone in this anymore, Theron. You have me. You have my bloodline, my power, whatever strength I can give you. We face this together. Theron pulled her close, careful of her injured shoulder, and buried his face in her hair. Around them, the palace mobilized, guards securing corridors, healers rushing to tend wounds, the machinery of crisis response kicking into motion. But in that moment, in the wreckage of trust and friendship, Arya and Theron held each other and mourned. Mourned for Marcus, whose grief had twisted him into something monstrous. Mourned for the conspiracy's victims going back 25 years. Mourned for the innocence they'd both lost. And when the mourning was done, when the healers had bandaged their wounds and the guards had removed Marcus's body, they stood together and prepared for war. Because the conspiracy was bigger than any of them had imagined. The betrayal ran deeper than they'd feared. And somewhere in the shadows, the people who'd orchestrated all of this, who'd murdered Arya's family, manipulated Marcus's grief, and nearly destroyed everything, were still out there. Still planning. Still dangerous. But now they knew. Now they understood the scope of what they faced. And they would not stop until every traitor was exposed and every conspirator brought to justice, no matter how high the cost, no matter how deep the corruption ran. The war for the truth had only just begun. Chapter 7. The palace felt like a tomb. 3 days since Marcus's death, and Arya could still feel the ghost of his betrayal haunting every corridor. Guards moved in doubled patrols, suspicious of each other, of shadows, of everything. The remaining candidates had been sent home with generous compensation and strict confidentiality agreements. And Theron had barely slept. Arya watched him from the doorway of his study, where he'd been holed up with military advisors and intelligence reports since dawn. His face was drawn, exhaustion carving lines around his eyes that hadn't been there a week ago. He'd killed his best friend. Had discovered a conspiracy that ran so deep it threatened the foundation of everything he'd built. And now the council wanted to make it worse. Your Majesty. Councillor Vera stood stiffly beside what remained of the council, 5 members instead of the original 9, after Aldrich had been arrested and 3 others had fled when Marcus's treachery came to light. We've been patient. We've allowed time for mourning, for investigation. But the territory demands stability. We need a Luna. I've chosen my Luna. Theron's voice was flat, drained of emotion. I announced it 3 days ago. You announced a mate bond, Lord Brennan corrected, and Arya noticed Theron's eyes narrow slightly at the man. Brennan was still under investigation, his name appearing on several suspicious documents. But without concrete proof, they couldn't arrest him yet. But the selection was not completed according to protocol. The formal trials, the council approval. I don't need council approval to accept my mate. Actually, Your Majesty, you do. This from Elder Cornelius, the head elder who'd served the Blackwood line for 40 years. His voice was reedy with age but sharp with authority. The Luna selection isn't just tradition. It's law. Established by your grandfather to prevent exactly the kind of instability we're facing now. Without formal completion of the selection and council ratification, the mate bond alone isn't sufficient to legitimize her position. Arya's hands clenched at her sides. She wanted to storm in, to argue, to fight. But Theron had asked her to wait outside while he dealt with the council. To let him handle the politics while she healed. Her shoulder was bandaged, the knife wound from Marcus still tender. What are you suggesting? Theron asked, his tone dangerous. Complete the selection, Vera said. Within 3 days. Hold the final ceremony, allow the council to formally evaluate Miss Nightshade, and ratify the choice according to law. That's all we're asking. And if I refuse? Silence fell, heavy and ominous. Then we'll have no choice but to call for a vote of no confidence, Cornelius said gravely. Not because we doubt your ability to lead, Your Majesty, but because the law is clear. A Luna must be chosen according to protocol, or the choice itself delegitimizes the Alpha's authority. We would be forced to question whether you're placing personal desire above the good of the territory. That's a coup. Theron's voice had gone deadly quiet. You're threatening to remove me from power if I don't bend to your demands. We're offering you a path forward, Brennan said smoothly. 3 days. 1 ceremony. Formal ratification. And Miss Nightshade becomes Luna with the full backing of the council and the law. Isn't that what you want? What he wanted was irrelevant, Arya realized, watching Theron's expression. They'd backed him into a corner. Either complete the selection according to their rules, or face a vote that could tear the territory apart. 3 days, Theron said finally. But I'm choosing Arya regardless of what you think of her. Understood? Of course, Your Majesty. Cornelius bowed, and Arya didn't miss the small satisfied smile that curved his lips. We simply ask that she proves herself worthy of the position. That's all any of us want. They filed out, and Arya quickly moved away from the door so they wouldn't see she'd been listening. Brennan's eyes found her anyway, something calculating in his expression before he nodded politely and continued down the corridor. She waited until they were gone before slipping into Theron's study. He stood at the window, hands braced against the frame, shoulders rigid with tension. You heard. Most of it. Arya moved to his side. 3 days. We can do that. It's a trap. Theron's voice was bitter. They're going to stack the ceremony against you. Make the challenges impossible, find reasons to declare you unworthy. And if I override them, they'll use it as justification for the no-confidence vote. Then I'll make sure they can't find fault. Arya touched his arm. Theron, I'm not some helpless girl anymore. My wolf is awake. I'm Nightshade. I can. You shouldn't have to prove anything. He turned to face her, and the anguish in his expression broke her heart. You're my mate. That should be enough. The fact that they're demanding more, that they're making you jump through hoops like some kind of political pawn. He stopped, jaw clenching. I'm tempted to tell them all to go to hell and choose you anyway. And start a civil war? If that's what it takes. Arya cupped his face with both hands. Don't. Please. I know you're angry, I know you're hurting, but we can't afford to fracture the territory. Not now, not with conspirators still out there. She pressed her forehead to his. 3 days. Let me prove myself. Not just to them, but to everyone who doubts that a girl with a suppressed wolf could possibly be worthy of being Luna. You are worthy. Then let me show them. Theron pulled her close, careful of her injured shoulder, and held her like she might disappear. They stood like that for a long moment, drawing strength from each other, before a knock interrupted them. Enter, Theron called. A guard stepped in, her expression uneasy. Your Majesty, Lady Morgana is requesting an audience with Miss Nightshade. Privately. Arya and Theron exchanged glances. Where? Arya asked. The Rose Garden, miss. She says it's urgent. Every instinct Arya had screamed this was a bad idea. But curiosity, and strategic thinking, won out. I'll meet her. But I want guards nearby. I'm coming with you, Theron said immediately. No. Arya touched his chest. If she wants to talk privately, she won't open up with you there. But I'll be fine. My wolf is awake, remember? I can defend myself if needed. Theron looked like he wanted to argue, but finally nodded. 10 minutes. If you're not back in 10 minutes, I'm coming after you. Deal. The rose garden was beautiful in the late afternoon light, a riot of colors and scents, carefully cultivated paths winding between beds of flowers that probably cost more than Arya's entire childhood home. Morgana stood at the center, near a fountain of white marble, looking every inch the perfect Luna candidate in a gown of ice blue silk. Thank you for coming, Morgana said as Arya approached. Her voice was polite, controlled, nothing like the fury Arya had seen on her face 3 days ago. I know you have no reason to trust me. That's true. Arya stopped a careful distance away, noting the guard's position discreetly around the garden's perimeter. What do you want, Morgana? To offer you a deal. Arya's laugh was harsh. Why would I make a deal with you? Because I'm offering you your life. Morgana turned to face her fully. Withdraw from the selection. Voluntarily. Tell the council you realize you're not ready for the position, that you need time to recover from recent trauma, whatever excuse you want. Just step back. So you can become Luna instead? So you can survive. Morgana's expression shifted, and for the first time, Arya saw something that might have been genuine concern beneath the perfect mask. Do you have any idea what you're walking into? The ceremony in 3 days, the council is going to make it brutal. They'll test you in ways designed to make you fail. And even if you somehow pass, the conspirators are still out there. Still hunting you. Being Luna will paint an even bigger target on your back. I can handle it. Can you? Morgana moved closer. You've had your wolf for less than a week. You have no formal training, no experience leading warriors, no understanding of court politics. You're a liability, Arya. Not because you're not brave or intelligent, you've proven you're both. But because you're vulnerable. And Theron's enemies will use that vulnerability to destroy him. The words hit harder than Arya wanted to admit because they echoed her own fears. The doubts that kept her awake at night, wondering if loving Theron would be his downfall. What exactly are you proposing? Arya asked carefully. Withdraw from the selection. My family has resources, trackers, intelligence networks, safe houses across the territory. We'll hunt down the remaining conspirators. We'll make sure you're protected, that you can live your life without constantly looking over your shoulder. Morgana's voice softened. You'll have your life, Arya. Your freedom. You can discover who you are as a nightshade without the weight of being Luna crushing you. Isn't that worth more than a title? And Theron? Morgana's expression was carefully neutral. He'll have a Luna who can actually help him. Someone who understands politics, who has alliances and resources, who won't be a weakness his enemies can exploit. He needs a strong partner, Arya. Someone who can stand beside him without requiring constant protection. That's not you. Not yet. But it's you. Yes. No false modesty, just honesty. I was bred for this position. Trained since childhood. I can unify the packs, strengthen alliances, give Theron the stability he needs to root out the conspiracy without worrying about protecting a mate who's barely learned to use her wolf. Morgana paused. He cares about you. I can see that. But caring isn't enough when the territory is at stake. Sometimes love means stepping aside so the person you care about can survive. Arya's throat felt tight. Because Morgana was right about so much, Arya was inexperienced, untrained, vulnerable in ways that could get Theron killed. What if her presence really did make him weaker? What if loving her destroyed everything he'd fought for? Think about it, Morgana said gently. You have 3 days. But Arya, if you go through with the ceremony and fail, the council will use it as justification to remove Theron from power. They'll say he chose poorly, that his judgment is compromised. Is your pride worth that risk? She left before Arya could respond, gliding through the garden like a ghost in blue silk. Arya sank onto the fountain's edge, her mind spinning. She loved Theron. The mate bonds sang between them, unbreakable and true. But love wasn't always enough, was it? Sometimes love meant sacrifice. Sometimes it meant walking away so the person you loved could thrive. You're thinking of running, her wolf said, the voice clearer and stronger than ever before. I'm thinking of doing what's best for him. Coward. You're thinking of running because you're scared. I'm terrified, Arya admitted. What if Morgana's right? What if I'm not strong enough? Then get stronger. Fight. Prove them all wrong. Her wolf's presence surged, fierce and protective. We are Nightshade. We don't surrender. We don't hide. We face our enemies and we win. Even if it means risking everything. Especially then. Arya sat in the garden as the sun set, wrestling with the choice before her. Safety or risk. Survival or courage. Walking away or standing her ground. When she finally stood, her decision was made. The final selection ceremony was held in the Great Hall, just as the original presentations had been. But this time, instead of beautiful gowns and formal introductions, the hall had been transformed into a training ground. Weapon racks lined the walls. Combat circles were marked on the floor. And at the far end, the council sat in judgment, with Theron standing beside them, not as a participant, but as a witness to the trial. Arya stepped into the hall wearing simple leather training gear, her dark hair braided back, the bandage on her shoulder hidden beneath the fitted tunic. Every eye in the assembled crowd turned to her, and she felt the weight of their skepticism like a physical thing. Miss Nightshade. Cornelius stood, his ancient face grave. You stand before this council to complete the Luna selection and prove yourself worthy of the position. You will face 3 trials: combat, leadership, and wisdom. Pass all 3, and the council will ratify your selection. Fail even one, and the selection is void. I understand. Arya's voice carried clearly through the hall. Your first trial, combat. A massive warrior stepped into one of the circles, easily 6.5 feet tall, built like a mountain, with scars that spoke of decades of battle. You will face Commander Rook in hand-to-hand combat. Victory is not required, only that you demonstrate courage and skill. Arya's stomach dropped. Rook. The same commander who'd overseen the earlier trials. The man was legendary, undefeated in single combat for 15 years. She heard murmurs through the crowd. Saw pity on some faces, satisfaction on others. They expected her to fail. Morgana's words echoed in her mind. You're a liability. Arya stepped into the circle. Rook bowed respectfully. Miss Nightshade. I'll try not to hurt you too badly. Appreciated. Arya rolled her shoulders, feeling her wolf coil like a spring inside her. But don't hold back on my account. Rook's expression shifted, something like approval flickering across his features. As you wish. The signal was given. Rook attacked. He was fast for his size, his first strike aimed at Arya's injured shoulder, testing her, looking for weakness. She dodged, barely, feeling the air displaced by his fist. The second strike came immediately, forcing her back, making her defensive. This was how she'd fought Morgana during the first trials. Reactive. Defensive. Always scrambling. Then stop scrambling, her wolf snarled. Fight. Something inside Arya shifted. Her wolf surged forward, not taking over, but merging, their instincts becoming one. Suddenly she could see Rook's tells, read his weight distribution, anticipate his moves before he made them. When he struck again, she didn't dodge. She redirected, using his momentum against him, slipping inside his guard. Her counterstrike caught him in the ribs, not enough to truly hurt, but enough to shock him. Rook's eyes widened. Good. They circled each other, and now Arya was the aggressor. She moved with confidence she'd never felt before, her wolf lending her speed and strength and the kind of primal combat instinct that couldn't be taught. When Rook threw her, she rolled and came up attacking. When he tried to pin her, she twisted free with serpentine grace. They fought for 5 minutes that felt like hours. Arya took hits, her ribs would be bruised tomorrow, her jaw aching, but she gave as good as she got. And when Rook finally swept her legs and pinned her to the ground, she saw respect in his eyes. Yield? He asked quietly. Never. Arya bucked hard, using her hips and core strength the way her wolf instructed, and somehow, impossibly, she reversed their positions. For 3 seconds, she had Commander Rook pinned. Then he broke free, and the match was called. Victory, Commander Rook, Cornelius announced. But his tone was grudging. However, Miss Nightshade demonstrated exceptional skill and courage. Trial 1, passed. The crowd erupted in surprised chatter. Arya stood, breathing hard, and caught Theron's eye. The pride in his expression made her chest ache. Trial 2, leadership. Vera stood now. You will lead a squad of 10 warriors through a tactical scenario. A village is under attack by rogues. Resources are limited. Make your decisions and command your troops. 10 warriors stepped forward, hardened soldiers who'd probably never taken orders from anyone below their ranking officers. They looked at Arya with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. She studied the tactical map they provided, feeling her wolf's instincts blend with her own intelligence. The village had 3 entry points. Limited defensible positions. Civilians to evacuate. Teams of 3, Arya decided. Alpha team takes the north entrance, that's our primary defense line. Set up crossfire positions here and here. Bravo team evacuates civilians through the south gate. Charlie team guards the evacuation route. The 10th warrior stays with me as a mobile response unit to reinforce wherever we're needed. And if Alpha team is overwhelmed, 1 warrior challenged. Then Bravo team pivots from evacuation to defense while Charlie team continues the civilian extraction. Arya met his eyes steadily. We don't abandon our position, but we adapt to survive. Questions? No one spoke. They ran the scenario. It was simulated, of course, actors playing rogues, civilians, and casualties. But Arya commanded her warriors with a natural authority that surprised even her. When a rogue broke through Alpha team's line, she redirected Charlie team without hesitation. When civilians panicked, she sent her calmest warrior to organize them. In the end, the village was saved with minimal casualties. Trial 2, passed, Vera said, and she almost sounded impressed. Final trial, wisdom. Cornelius stood, and Arya felt ice slide down her spine at his expression. You have claimed your mother uncovered a conspiracy 23 years ago. A conspiracy that led to multiple murders and continues to threaten this territory today. Tell us, who do you believe is the final conspirator? Who stands among us wearing a mask of loyalty while plotting our destruction? The question hung in the air like an executioner's blade. Arya looked at the assembled council. At Brennan, whose name appeared on suspicious documents but who'd never been proven guilty. At Vera, who'd been harsh but seemed genuinely concerned about proper protocol. At Cornelius himself, ancient and venerable, who'd served 3 generations of Blackwood Alphas. And she thought about the evidence. The patterns. The timing. I don't know, she said honestly. Disappointed murmurs rippled through the crowd. Cornelius's smile was thin. Then you fail the final. But I know how to find out. Arya's voice cut through the noise. The conspirators have been one step ahead of us because they have inside information. They knew which candidates would be where. They knew when security would be lightest. They knew exactly how to frame me and when to strike. She paused. That means they're either on the council itself, or they have access to council deliberations. That's speculation, Brennan said quickly. Is it? Arya turned to face him. Lord Brennan, your signature appears on a requisition for dark magic supplies. Supplies used in wolf suppression rituals. Care to explain? Those requisitions were forged. By who? Someone would have had to access secure council documents to forge your signature convincingly. Arya felt her wolf's certainty. Unless it wasn't forged at all. Brennan's face flushed. This is absurd. I've served this council for. Trial 3 isn't complete, Cornelius interrupted sharply. Miss Nightshade, make your accusation clearly. Who is the conspirator? Arya met the old wolf's eyes. And suddenly, pieces clicked into place. The way Cornelius had pushed for the 3-day deadline. The way he'd structured the trials to be nearly impossible. The way he'd positioned himself to question her final answer. He wanted her to accuse Brennan. Wanted her to be wrong so he could use it to invalidate the entire selection. You, Arya said quietly. Head Elder Cornelius. You're the final conspirator. Absolute silence crashed over the hall. Cornelius laughed, a thin, reedy sound. That's ridiculous. I've served the Blackwood line for 40 years. Exactly. 40 years. You were here when my grandparents were murdered. You were here when my mother fled. You've been in the perfect position to orchestrate everything because no one would ever suspect the loyal, devoted head elder. Arya's voice strengthened. But you made a mistake. You kept pushing for formal protocol, for strict adherence to law. Not because you care about tradition, but because you needed legal justification to remove Theron if he refused to cooperate. You were building a case for a vote of no confidence all along. This is fantasy. Then explain why Marcus came to you 3 times in the week before he died. Theron's voice rang out cold and absolute. I had my intelligence officers pull security records. Every meeting happened in your chambers, late at night, when you thought no one was watching. What were you and my beta discussing, Elder Cornelius? What lies were you feeding him to turn him against me? Cornelius's expression flickered. Just for a moment, the mask slipped, and Arya saw something dark and hateful beneath. You don't understand, he said, his voice dropping to something bitter. Your father destroyed the old ways. Conquered independent pacts, forced unification, crushed anyone who wanted autonomy. I watched him build an empire on the bones of wolves who just wanted to rule their own lands. And then you continued his legacy. More conquest, more control, more Blackwood dominance. He turned to Arya. The Nightshade line should have been the answer. True nobility, not conquerors. But your mother sided with Thomas Blackwood. Helped him identify and eliminate wolves who opposed his rule. She betrayed her own kind. So you had her killed, Arya said, her voice shaking with rage. You murdered my grandparents. You hunted my mother for years until you finally found her. You tried to kill me. You were supposed to die with her. Cornelius's composure finally shattered completely. But that fool James Whitmore got her alone, moved her constantly. By the time we found her, you were away visiting family. We thought the bloodline was ended, thought we'd finally stopped the Blackwood Nightshade alliance. He laughed bitterly. And then you appeared at the selection. The one thing we'd tried to prevent for 23 years, walking right into our hands. It was almost perfect. Almost, Theron said, and his voice promised death. Guards. The windows exploded inward. Rogues poured through the shattered glass, dozens of them, moving with coordinated precision that spoke of military training. The crowd screamed. Warriors drew weapons. And Cornelius laughed as chaos erupted. You're too late, he shouted over the din. Even if you kill me, the movement continues. There are hundreds of us, thousands across the territories, all waiting for the signal to rise up and tear down your empire. A rogue lunged at Arya. She moved on instinct, her combat training from minutes ago still fresh, and drove her borrowed dagger through its throat. Hot blood sprayed across her face as the rogue dropped. More came. Too many. The hall descended into violence, warriors fighting rogues, candidates screaming and fleeing, the council members scrambling for safety. Arya faced a choice. Run and hide, let the warriors handle it, survive to fight another day. Or fight. Here. Now. Prove she wasn't just a Luna by bloodline but by action. Her wolf answered before her human mind could. Fight. Power exploded through Arya like nothing she'd ever felt. Her wolf surged forward, not just awakening but emerging, and the transformation that tore through her body was devastating in its intensity. She shifted. But not into the normal brown or gray that most wolves wore. Arya's fur came in silver, pure, shimmering silver that seemed to glow in the firelight. She was smaller than the massive male wolves around her, but there was something in her presence that made every wolf in the hall freeze. True Luna. Rare beyond measure. Born maybe once in a generation. Silver fur that marked the moon goddess's chosen, with power to command and authority that transcended normal pack hierarchy. Arya's wolf threw back her head and howled, a sound of command and challenge and absolute dominance that shook the foundations of the hall. The rogues hesitated. And in that moment of hesitation, Arya attacked. She moved like quicksilver, like moonlight given form, tearing through rogues with primal efficiency. But more than that, she commanded. Her presence alone made the defending warriors fight harder, coordinate better. She was the eye of the storm, the anchor point around which the entire battle pivoted. To me. She didn't speak with words, but every wolf understood. Form ranks. Defend the exits. And they obeyed. Even warriors who'd never met her, who had no reason to follow her orders, moved to obey. Because she was Luna. True Luna. And her authority was absolute. Theron fought beside her in his own shifted form, massive and black and deadly. Together they were devastating, two halves of a perfectly balanced whole. Where Arya commanded, Theron executed. Where he created openings, she exploited them. They moved like they'd been fighting together for years instead of minutes. The rogues broke. Those who could still move retreated, fleeing back through the shattered windows. In the sudden silence, Arya shifted back to human form, breathing hard, covered in blood that wasn't hers. And standing in the center of the hall, illuminated by firelight and carnage, she met the council's eyes. No one spoke. No one moved. Then Theron shifted back to human form beside her, and his voice carried absolute authority. Does anyone still question whether Arya Nightshade is worthy to be Luna? Silence. Trial 3, passed, Vera said faintly. All trials passed. The council ratifies the selection. Arya Nightshade is Luna. The remaining crowd erupted, not in protest, but in approval. In awe. Because they'd just watched a girl with a week-old wolf transform into true Luna and lead the defense of the palace itself. Arya swayed slightly, exhaustion finally catching up. Theron caught her immediately, pulling her against his chest. "Easy," he murmured. "You did it. You're safe now." "Cornelius," Arya looked around frantically. "Captured," Theron nodded toward where guards held the head elder in chains. "He'll answer for every crime. Every murder. Everything." Arya let herself sag against Theron, the adrenaline finally fading. She'd done it. Passed the trials. Fought the rogues. Proved she wasn't just a girl playing dress-up, but a Luna who could stand beside an Alpha King and defend her people. She'd chosen courage over fear. And she'd won. Around them, the hall slowly began to settle. The wounded were tended. The dead counted. The aftermath of battle giving way to the work of recovery. But in the center of it all, Theron held his Luna, and Arya held her mate, and for the first time since this entire ordeal began, they both felt something that might have been peace. The conspiracy was ended. The traitors exposed. And the true Luna had risen. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, they'd won. And that was enough. Chapter 8. Dawn broke over the palace with unexpected gentleness, as if the world itself was trying to heal after the violence of the night before. Arya stood at her window, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of gold and rose, and marveled at how much had changed in one night. The great hall was being cleaned and repaired. The wounded were recovering in the medical wing. An elder Cornelius sat in a cell beneath the palace, awaiting trial for crimes spanning 25 years. The conspiracy was over. Truly over. "You should be sleeping," Theron's voice came from the doorway. He'd finally left his study, though the exhaustion on his face said he hadn't slept any more than she had. Couldn't. Arya turned to face him. "Every time I close my eyes, I see it all again. The rogues. The battle. The way my wolf just emerged. True Luna." Theron moved to her side, his hand finding the small of her back. "Do you understand how rare that is? Most territories go centuries without seeing silver fur. And you," his voice softened with something like awe. "You commanded warriors who'd never met you. Led a defense with instincts you didn't know you had. You were magnificent. I was terrified. That makes it even more magnificent." He turned her to face him fully. "The council is meeting in 2 hours. They want to hold a formal ratification ceremony this afternoon. Make the Luna selection official before the entire realm." Arya's stomach flipped. "That fast? They're afraid if we wait, something else will go wrong." Theron's smile was wry. "Can't say I blame them. These past weeks have been one disaster after another. Caused by a conspiracy trying to kill me. Which is now ended." Theron cupped her face gently. "Cornelius confessed everything during interrogation last night. The names of every conspirator, every payment, every murder. We're rounding up the last of them today. By this evening, the threat will be completely eliminated." It seemed too good to be true. Too easy. But Arya saw the certainty in Theron's eyes and chose to believe. "What happens to Helena and Vivian?" she asked. "Banishment. Helena will stand trial for conspiracy and child abuse. The evidence is overwhelming, the payments, her confession, witness testimony. She'll be stripped of her title and lands and exiled to the border territories." Theron's expression hardened. "Vivian is being given a choice: renounce her mother publicly and remain in the territory under supervision, or go into exile with her. She'll choose exile." Arya said it with certainty. "Vivian's cruel, but she loves Helena. In her own twisted way. Then they'll leave together and never return. If either sets foot in the capital again, they'll be arrested." Theron paused. Is that justice enough? If you want more. No. Arya surprised herself with how little she felt about it. No anger, no satisfaction, just emptiness where Helena and Vivian used to occupy space in her thoughts. Exile is enough. I don't want revenge. I just want them gone. Theron pulled her close, and they stood like that for a long moment, watching the sunrise together. In the distance, Arya could see workers already repairing the damaged sections of the palace. Life continuing despite everything. The council wants you to address the realm, Theron said quietly. After the ratification. To introduce yourself as Luna in your own words. What am I supposed to say? Hello, I'm the girl who was nobody last month, but surprise, I'm actually ancient nobility and also true Luna? Theron's chest rumbled with quiet laughter. Something like that. Though perhaps with more eloquence. I'm not good at speeches. You're good at truth. That's better. He kissed the top of her head. Speak from your heart. Tell them your mother's story. Tell them who you are and who you choose to be. They'll follow you, Arya. They already do. A knock interrupted them. Margaret entered with her usual efficiency, though her eyes were warm when she looked at Arya. Miss Nightshade, or should I say, Luna, I have your coronation gown ready. The seamstresses worked through the night. You didn't have to. It was an honor. Margaret smiled. Your mother's dress was ruined during the selection. This one is made in her memory, using fabrics from the Nightshade territories and a design based on what Lunas wore in the old northern packs. Arya's throat tightened. Thank you. Come. We have much to do and only hours to do it. The great hall had been transformed. What had been a battlefield last night was now something close to sacred. The broken windows had been covered with silk banners bearing the Blackwood crest on one side and, miraculously, the Nightshade crest on the other. White roses filled every available surface, their scent masking the last traces of blood and smoke. And at the far end, two thrones sat side by side for the first time in decades. The Alpha King's throne, and the Luna's. Arya stood in an antechamber, staring at her reflection and barely recognizing herself. The gown was breathtaking, midnight blue like her mother's ruined dress, but this one was embroidered with silver wolves running through a pattern of stars. The Nightshade crest was worked subtly into the bodice. And around her shoulders, carefully preserved and cleaned, was Theron's cloak from that first night, the one he'd covered her with when she'd been humiliated and exposed. She'd asked to wear it during the ceremony. He'd agreed without hesitation. You look like you were born to this, Celeste said, adjusting Arya's hair for the third time. She'd been allowed to stay as one of Arya's personal attendants, and the friendship between them had only strengthened through everything. How are you feeling? Like I'm going to throw up. That's normal. Celeste grinned. I felt the same way at my sister's wedding. But the moment you step into that hall, your wolf will take over. You'll know exactly what to do. I hope you're right. I'm always right. Celeste squeezed her hand. Now come on. They're waiting. The doors opened, and Arya stepped into the great hall. Every eye turned to her. The hall was packed, nobles, warriors, common pack members, all standing in neat rows. At the far end, Theron waited in full ceremonial dress, his silver eyes finding her across the distance with an intensity that stole her breath. Arya walked the long aisle, head high, Theron's cloak trailing behind her like a shadow. She heard whispers as she passed. True Luna. Silver fur. Nightshade bloodline. She saved us. When she reached the dais, Theron extended his hand. She took it, and together they faced the assembled crowd. Counselor Vera stepped forward. She'd been named temporary head elder until a permanent replacement could be chosen. Her voice carried clearly through the hall. 23 years ago, the Nightshade line was thought to be extinct. Today, we stand corrected. Arya Nightshade, daughter of Lillian Seraphina Nightshade, granddaughter of Alpha Marcus and Luna Seraphina Nightshade, has returned to us. She has passed the Luna trials. She has proven herself in combat and leadership. She has revealed herself as true Luna, chosen by the moon goddess herself. Vera turned to face them directly. Alpha King Theron Blackwood, do you choose this woman as your Luna? As your mate and equal? As the one who will stand beside you and lead our people into the future? I do. Theron's voice was absolute. From the moment I saw her, I knew. She is my mate. My Luna. My choice. Now and always. Then by the power vested in me by the council and the laws of our people, I pronounce you Alpha King and Luna. Vera lifted a crown from the cushion beside her, not the heavy, ornate thing previous Lunas had worn, but something simpler and more elegant. Silver worked into the shape of wolves running beneath a crescent moon. Arya Nightshade, do you accept this crown? Do you accept the responsibility of leading our people? Do you swear to protect, to guide, and to serve? Arya looked at Theron. At the crown. At the hundreds of faces watching her with hope and curiosity and cautious acceptance. She thought of her mother, who'd fled to protect her. Of her father, who'd given up everything to keep her safe. Of 5 years of being told she was nothing, worthless, broken. And she thought of who she'd become despite it all. I accept, Arya said clearly. I swear to protect our people. To honor my mother's sacrifice and my bloodline's legacy. To stand beside my mate as an equal partner. I swear this on my life and my wolf and everything I am. Vera placed the crown on her head. It settled with surprising lightness, as if it had been made for her specifically. Then rise, Luna Arya Nightshade Blackwood. And may the moon goddess guide your path. The hall erupted in cheers. The reception afterward was overwhelming, endless lines of wolves waiting to meet their new Luna, to offer congratulations, to pledge loyalty. Arya's face hurt from smiling, her hand cramped from shaking so many others, but she kept going because this mattered. These people mattered. Luna Arya. The voice was familiar but unexpected. Arya turned to find Morgana approaching, resplendent in silver silk that almost matched Arya's coronation gown. Almost, but not quite, a deliberate choice that acknowledged Arya's true Luna status without directly competing. Lady Morgana. Arya kept her voice neutral. I wanted to offer my congratulations. Morgana's expression was carefully composed, but Arya saw genuine respect beneath the surface. You've proven yourself far more capable than I credited. That was gracious of you to not gloat. I have no reason to gloat. You were right about many things. I was inexperienced, untrained, vulnerable. I still am, in many ways. But you're learning. And your wolf, Morgana's smile turned wry. True Luna. The moon goddess has a sense of irony, giving such power to someone who started with so little. Or maybe she has perfect timing. Arya studied the other woman. What will you do now? Return to the Eastern Territories? Eventually. But first, I've accepted a position on the new council. Vera asked me to serve as an advisor on interterritorial relations. Morgana's smile turned genuine. Apparently, my political connections are too valuable to waste. So I'll be staying in the capital for the foreseeable future. Then I suppose we'll be seeing a lot of each other. Indeed. Morgana's eyes glinted with something that might have been amusement. Try not to make me regret offering you grudging respect, Luna. I'll do my best, Lady Morgana. They parted with mutual understanding, not quite friendship, but something closer to professional respect. Progress, Arya thought. Small but significant. The reception continued for hours. But finally, as the sun began to set, Theron caught her hand and led her away from the crowd. No one stopped them. Even the guards seemed to understand that the Alpha King and his Luna needed privacy. They ended up in the same library where they'd first talked honestly, where the mate bond had snapped into place between them. Theron closed the doors and locked them, creating a sanctuary from the outside world. Finally, he said, pulling Arya into his arms. Do you know how difficult it's been to keep my hands off you all day? You literally just held my hand through 6 hours of reception. Not enough. He kissed her, slow and deep, tasting of champagne and something uniquely him. I needed this. Just you. Just us. Arya melted into him, letting the tension of the day finally drain away. When they pulled apart, she touched the cloak still draped over her shoulders. You covered me with this when I had nothing. When I was humiliated and exposed and certain my life was over. And now I stand beside you as Luna. You were always my Luna. Theron's hand covered hers on the cloak. From the moment I saw you standing there with your chin up and your mother's ruined dress hanging off you, refusing to run, I knew. Maybe not consciously, but my wolf knew. That's my mate. That's the one worth fighting for. I was nobody. You were never nobody. You were suppressed, hidden, convinced you were worthless. But underneath all of that, you were always this. He gestured to her crown, to the coronation gown, to everything she'd become. I just had to wait for you to see it too. Arya's throat tightened with emotion. I love you. I should have said it before, but everything was so chaotic. I love you too. Theron kissed her forehead. And we have the rest of our lives to say it. No more conspiracies. No more death threats. Just us, building something new. Together. Always together. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the library where everything had changed. Outside, the celebration continued, but in here, it was just them. Just the Alpha King and his Luna, finally free to be together without fear or hesitation. A knock interrupted the peace. Theron growled slightly. This better be important. Your Majesty, Luna. A guard's voice came through the door. A messenger has arrived from the Northern Territories. Says it's urgent. Theron and Arya exchanged glances. Enter. A young wolf stepped in, travel-worn and nervous. She bowed deeply. Luna Arya, forgive the intrusion. But I was sent by the Northern Border Pacts with information we thought you should know immediately. What information? Arya asked. There's been a rumor, unconfirmed, but persistent, that one of the Nightshade bloodline may have survived the massacre 25 years ago. The messenger's eyes were bright with possibility. A cousin, we think. Someone who was too young to be a threat at the time and was smuggled out by loyal servants. The trail is old and difficult to follow, but there have been sightings. A woman with your eyes. Your mother's features. Arya's heart stopped. A living relative? Someone who shared her blood, her history? Where? Theron demanded. The far northern territories, near the old Nightshade estate. The locals speak of a healer who lives alone, who avoids pack politics but helps anyone who asks. They call her the Silver Witch because she has strange powers. The messenger hesitated. Powers that sound very much like those of a true Luna bloodline. We need to investigate this, Arya said immediately. If there's even a chance. We will. Theron squeezed her hand. But not tonight. Tonight, we celebrate. Tomorrow, we'll send our best trackers north to follow up on this rumor. If your cousin exists, we'll find her. The messenger bowed and left, taking the tantalizing possibility with her. Arya stared at the closed door, her mind spinning. A cousin, she whispered. I might not be alone. You're not alone. Theron turned her to face him. You have me. You have this pack. You have Celeste and a dozen other people who care about you. But if this cousin exists, if you have family, then we'll bring her home. Home. Arya tested the word. This palace, this life, all of it felt like a dream she might wake from. But Theron's solid presence beside her, the weight of the crown on her head, the mate bond humming between them, those were real. Come on. Theron's expression shifted to something playful. Let's go for a run. Now? Right now. It's a full moon, and I haven't run with my Luna yet. That's a tradition we need to start. They slipped out of the palace through a side entrance, avoiding the still celebrating crowds. The gardens opened onto forest land, and the full moon hung heavy and silver in the sky, calling to every wolf in the territory. Arya and Theron shifted together. Her silver fur gleamed in the moonlight, brighter than any torch. His black coat seemed to absorb shadows, making him appear and disappear as he moved. They stood for a moment, two wolves under the moon, looking at each other with new eyes. Then Theron took off running, and Arya chased. They raced through the forest like children, all the weight of crowns and duty falling away. Arya's wolf was pure joy, reveling in the strength that had been locked away for so long. She was fast, faster than she'd imagined possible, but Theron matched her stride for stride. They ran until they reached a clearing deep in the forest, where moonlight pooled like liquid silver. Both shifted back to human form, breathing hard, laughing at the sheer freedom of it. "This," Arya said, gesturing to the forest, the moon, him. "This is what I want. Not just the crowns and ceremonies, but this. Running together. Being together. Building something real. Then that's what we'll have." Theron pulled her close. "I promise you, every day won't be a battle. We'll have peace. Time. Moments like this. And when the next crisis comes? Because there would be another crisis. That was the nature of leadership. We'll face it together. As Alpha King and Luna. As mates. As equals." Theron kissed her softly. "That's what it means to rule together, sharing both the burden and the joy." They shifted again and ran back toward the palace, racing through trees painted silver by moonlight. Arya's wolf howled with pure happiness, and Theron's answered, a duet that echoed through the forest, announcing to every wolf within hearing distance that the Alpha King had found his Luna. When they finally returned to the palace, the celebration was winding down. But Arya felt more energized than she had all day. Because this, running free under the moon with her mate, this was who they really were beneath the titles and responsibilities. They were wolves. Mates. Partners. And nothing, not conspiracies or politics or the weight of the past, could change that fundamental truth. Arya stood on the palace balcony one last time that night, looking out over her new territory. Her home. Somewhere in the northern territories, a cousin might be waiting to be found. Somewhere in the capital, former enemies were learning to accept her as Luna. And somewhere in this vast palace, a life was waiting to be built with the man she loved. Theron joined her on the balcony, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "What are you thinking?" "That 3 weeks ago, I was sleeping in an attic and convinced I was worthless. And now I'm Luna. True Luna. Standing beside an Alpha King and planning to search for family I didn't know existed." Arya leaned back against him. "It doesn't feel real." "It's real. All of it." Theron's chin rested on top of her head. "And it's only the beginning. We have a lifetime ahead of us, Arya. A lifetime of moments like this, of challenges to face and victories to celebrate. Together." "Together," Arya repeated, and the word felt like a vow. Like a promise. Like home. In the distance, wolves howled at the full moon, her people, celebrating their new Luna. And Arya howled back, her voice joining the chorus, claiming her place in the pack and the territory and the world. She was Arya Nightshade Blackwood. True Luna. Mate to the Alpha King. Daughter of murdered nobility and survivor of a conspiracy that had tried to end her before she'd even begun. And her story was only just starting. The future stretched ahead, uncertain, challenging, full of possibility. But whatever came next, she would face it as she'd faced everything else, with courage, with her mate beside her, and with the unbreakable strength that came from knowing exactly who she was. Not nobody. Not worthless. But Luna. And that made all the difference. Under the full moon, 2 wolves ran through the forest, one silver as starlight, one black as midnight. The Alpha King and his Luna, finally free, finally whole, finally home. And in their wake, they left a trail of moonlight and the promise of a future built not on conquest or conspiracy, but on love, truth, and the kind of strength that only comes from facing darkness and emerging into light. This was their beginning. And it was everything. The end. Thank you for listening to this story. Like, share, and subscribe for more.